Lennard Ray. That's your name. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby. Listen, I'm just saying we can rule the world, just me and you. If you quit playing, won't you take a chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Look, see we vibing and you know it's true. Baby, what it do? Do for me and I'ma do for you. No doubt about it, boo. See, I'm a Midwest king, looking for myself a queen. Ready to chase a dream with a dope self-esteem. You find it in all I know, and that's for real. You get to shaking that ass on the floor, and I see what's real. No disrespect, I just tell it like it is. Do you ever want some kids? What your ultimate goals? Maybe I can help with those. The mo was broke when he made you a blessing. You looking like a whole buffet, and I need some seconds. You say you had promiscuous ways, that was back in the day. I'll be alive, I say I did it, that shit was a phase. So baby, take this journey with me. You can pick the time and place, this nigga isn't picky. Smile on your face, I know the deal. Sign and deliver after seal. I can see it in her eyes, this one right here for real. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby, listen, I'm just saying we can rule the world, just me and you. If you quit playing, won't you take the chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk, yeah. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Lady, you so far ahead of these others, just like a ship on the horizon. Picking up on your vibe, signal stronger than Verizon. All the thoughts that I've been contemplating, ain't no time for faking or debating. You the one, ain't no mistaking. Look, I see your swag different. Always carry yourself like you ready, you on a mission. I had to know you, I'm tempted. I can see why you timid. Hold up now, baby, listen. Just take that dance with me. I can show you that there's a difference. I'm locked in. I throw away my playaways because you pop in. A shooter always shoot a shot. With you by my side, I guarantee we'll reach the top. I put that on God and then I'll give you all that I got. So baby, take this journey with me. You can pick the time and place, this nigga isn't picky. Smile on your face, I know the deal. Sign and deliver after seal. I can see it in her eyes, this one right here for real. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby, listen, I'm just saying we can rule the world, just me and you. If you quit playing, won't you take the chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk, yeah. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk to me.
Welcome to the Behind. Oh, it's got set back to default. Tisk, tisk. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Good old OBS Studio setting my stuff back to default, but I figured it out, knocked it out real quick. Welcome, you guys. I know where to catch OBS slipping. I know where to find it and nix it real quick before we end up having, people watching the show for 2-3 minutes and I'm sitting here shuffling on camera. Nah, we ain't having none of that. Know how to fix it right away. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another fantastic episode of Behind Them Sticks with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming, part of TSWS Gaming. That is the channel that you are on right now. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you like this type of content, because I talk to all different types of people around the world. And today here with me, I have none other than Agent Deli. He goes out as on Twitter, but I'm just gonna go on ahead and call him Deli for the whole episode. Is that cool, brother? You cool with that?
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, that's cool for me. That's perfect. It's
right,
short,
perfect.
It's nice, it's sweet.
Yep. The less opportunity for me to trip, the better. So I'm going ahead and roll with that. But anyways, brother, how are you doing today? Thank you for taking your time out of your day and coming with me. I put a little stray cat up on your right next to your face on your profile picture on this stream, just because that's what you took a picture of earlier. Box over the top of the stray cat and whatnot, wearing it as I guess a shield of some sort. I don't know.
No, it was a hat. There's like a button prompt you can put it on your head, and it inverts all your controls.
Oh, okay, wow.
It's super funny. I think it's adorable.
That's funny because if you invert the controls, I can play the game better. I'm an inverted player. I play everything upside down, I guess, from what everybody else likes to say.
I only like to fly helicopters upside down, like inverted. Like if I play Battlefield or other things like that, I use my vehicles inverted.
So before we get into anything, you brought up Battlefield just now, and I just got a quick question for you. How do you feel the flight controls are in that game? Because to me, they make no damn sense.
I like them personally. Like I said, I invert them, so I feel like they're much better suited that way. They're a little sluggish, if that's the right term. They feel heavy, so it feels like sometimes you're fighting the vehicle that you're flying, and like just consistently across the board, like every vehicle, not just A10, the jet or the helicopter and the AH-6 and a bunch of other things. It's like consistently, I feel like I'm always half a second behind my input and responsiveness, and I think that's where the heaviness comes from.
Bro, I can't tell you enough. I don't understand. And Matt Likes Games actually said this to me a while back when it rung true, where I shouldn't be able to pick up Microsoft Flight Simulator and those controls and everything about that is easier than a game like Battlefield, where it feels like it should be more simplistic for you to pick up and just move around and whatnot. And I know people say, oh, well, Microsoft Flight Simulator doesn't have guns and whatnot, but still, just maneuvering the plane, or better yet, a jet in Battlefield is just tough for some reason. It's just something else. It's extra hard to me to where it shouldn't be.
I wish I had an answer for you. Because ideally, when you have a game that has these kind of mechanics and controls, you want them to be as fluid as possible. I mean, look at the rest of Battlefield, right? But something about flight controls is like it's not quite clunky. It's just heavy. It's just delayed. It's slowed. It feels more like that you're piloting anything.
Yes.
A boat, yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of all of this and whatnot. So I kick off every episode asking straight up, what gaming and social media platforms are you on, so people could either check you out, game with you, holler at you, or whatever, yada yada. Go ahead and let everybody know.
I'm mostly on Twitter. My Twitter and my YouTube are the same. I stream on YouTube occasionally whenever I have free time, and we'll do like design studies and stuff like that. So if you like want to peek into my brain while I'm playing a game live, it's Agent Deli. So it'll be Agent Deli on YouTube, Agent Deli on Twitter. Twitter's the best way to reach me. I just tweet my thoughts. I'm a normal human being. I just happen to be a game developer. So I just tweet out music I'm listening to, games I'm playing, things that I look forward to, movies that I love watching, stuff like that. I gatekeep my following really, really hard. So I hope nobody feels bad if I don't follow them back. But I love interacting with everybody. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Now I know we mentioned that you were playing Stray. I don't remember if it was before or after we showed up on the podcast, but what else are you playing other than that right now? And describe your kind of what you think of Stray so far.
So I'm playing Stray. I'm also playing Sable on my computer, which is I believe is an Xbox exclusive game, console, and then PC as well too. I just finished Superliminal yesterday. It's like a little puzzle game. It's like a perspective-based puzzle game. And I've been playing Remnant from the Ashes on the PlayStation 4
Nice.
with my younger brother. And yeah, so those are the games that I've been playing as of recent. Oh, and the Quarry. I've been playing the Quarry on my PlayStation 5. So as for Stray, I'm about an hour and a half in. It's very relaxing, very soothing. It's kind of one of those games where you can't quite turn your brain off because there are puzzle elements and there is a lot of exploration. Um, but it's a game that's definitely takes a step back and says like, hey, take your time and explore as much as you can. So there's a lot to explore. There's a lot to uncover. So if you're one of those kinds of players that just like to follow the golden path and just go, shortest from A to B, no detours, this game would probably annoy you more than anything else because Stray wants the world building, and Stray wants you to explore everything. It wants you to uncover everything. It wants you to take a look at every document, at every painted sign, every single piece of information you can to uncover the mystery. Because there's an overarching mystery right now of like why everybody's stuck in this like dome underground, and why the outside is frowned upon, and of course everybody is like a robot who's afraid of you, who's like a cat, because it's like you're like the only organic being that they've seen in a long time, so they're afraid. And that's all I've been able to gather at the moment right now.
No one can save the world like a cute kitty, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely something. You have a robot companion too, so that it's like you have this robot companion for like a flashlight and reading things and storing items in your inventory. Whether or not you like that or not it's so that game design wise you're able to have these kind of features that you normally would have if you had opposable thumbs and hands, and we're 5'6" or whatever. So to kind of supplement that kind of those game mechanics that you would normally have as a human being, you do need some kind of assistance, especially since you're a cat. So all the conversation and everything in the game takes place, like, is translated and filtered through this robot companion. Your flashlight is also your robot companion, and your inventory is kept by your robot companion as well too.
Gotcha. I wanted to shout out the chat real quick. Matt Likes Games, good to see you here. Mr. Inferno, Stank Ma, Too Big. Really good to see some of you guys that are returning, coming back, and definitely good to see some people that aren't always here. So, I mean, fantastic. I really hope you guys continue to come back and whatnot for more shows, but let's continue on. So we were talking before the show just briefly, because you guys know I like to ask this question before I get on, get the people onto the show. I always ask, what was your, first console that you ever used and played like on a regular basis, or at least had immediate access to? And Deli said his first console that he had was the NES, the Nintendo, and a bucket. He literally said a bucket of games. So going ahead and please just give me a little bit of background and what you meant by that whole bucket of games, and when did you end up even getting this NES?
So I immigrated to the States in 2005 from Vietnam. And when I came over here, I moved from California to Maryland to Virginia. Just kind of moved all over the place, trying to find an area that was suitable for like the income wise and stuff like that. My mom and my dad decided to move in this like lower income neighborhood. And I guess they were afraid that I was gonna just go out there and be wild and stuff, because, back in Vietnam, I lived on a farm. So I was so used to being outside and stuff. Being cooped up in the house was not something that I was used to. So my dad got the smart idea to go over to people's houses and speak to people in the community, and see what kind of stuff is going on. So, it was like kids were watching TV, kids were playing video games, kids were reading books and that kind of stuff like that. So he went out to the flea market and ended up getting an NES for a steal. I don't know how much for, but a steal. And then he literally got a bucket of games, like it was like a bucket, like how people would collect rain in. It was obviously a flea market. So it just had probably like 20 or 30 games in there. And he was like,
So
I'll take this.
like a 5-gallon bucket.
Yes, it was a legit bucket. and he was like, just give me the console, give me the bucket of games. Here's how much it is, and then let's pack it in the car and take it home. So when he introduced that to me, obviously I didn't speak English at the time, so I was just excited to play games. Like, I was excited to see what was going on. And this was my first introduction to video games. This is my first introduction to like TV. This is my first introduction to really any entertainment.
This is 2005, and
This is
you are
2005.
introduced to gaming with an NES. Then, I mean, that's pretty.
It was kind of
OG.
crazy. Yeah. So yeah, with all that being said, it was one of those things where we had I was just flying through the game. So I had the NES, I had the Duck Hunt gun, I had the zapper. And so I played Duck Hunt, which I wasn't really good at and I really didn't like. I played Super Mario Brothers. I had Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. I had DuckTales, which I was a huge fan of. I had Contra, Ghost and Goblins, and I had a couple other games. Like I had Hollow Man and a bunch of platformers and stuff. Link's Awakening. I had the golden cartridge, the one that supposedly the one that everybody hates. I didn't really get that far in that game. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I mostly played DuckTales and Mega Man. Those were the easiest for me to comprehend. My older sister at the time really loved Contra, so we played a lot of Contra together. She ended up playing Contra. I ended up dying a lot. So yeah, from there, same thing. My dad went out and was like, "Oh, you really love video games. This is cool. This will keep you occupied. This will keep it. It's like, this thing will be your daycare. This will babysit you." So he went out and talked to some people and ended up getting a PlayStation 1. So I went from NES to PlayStation 1.
That's a big jump.
And then it was a pretty huge jump. So I didn't get as many games with the PlayStation 1 as I did with the NES. So I ended up playing games like Tekken. I had this game called Action Man, which was like really, really sick. At the time, it was like probably the closest thing to Metal Gear. I had the original Metal Gear. I just wasn't good at it. And I don't know where it is now. But I have the original Black Label copy of Final Fantasy VII. It's on my shelf somewhere. So yeah, I had a bunch of cool games that I didn't know how to play. So I ended up playing Tekken a whole lot.
All right. And just to let you guys know in the chat, we got a few more people that popped in here. By the way, what's up, Hustle and Motivate? Good to see you. I want to go ahead and give you guys out in, watching the opportunity to ask any kind of questions that you would have for like any sort of developer or whatnot. I want you guys to be able to ask those type of questions. I will let you guys know when it's appropriate to ask. As of right now, I'm just kind of digging in to see what he, how he came up in gaming and whatnot. So let's hold off the questions for right now, but I'll definitely open it up here in a little bit for you guys to ask some questions if you guys do get curious. If you feel like you want to go on ahead and just throw the question down there, you can as of right now, but I won't be asking it until a little bit later. So just to continue on, so you ended up with the PlayStation, played quite a bit of that for a little while. May I ask, like, how old you were around that time?
I was born in 97, so in 2005, in 2005, I was 8. And so by the time I got my hands on the PlayStation 1, I was probably 9, 10 years old. And then I got my hands on the PlayStation 2 as well. A Game Boy Advance, which I was very, very fond of. So I used my Game Boy Advance all the way up till probably up until almost middle school. So yeah, so until about 6th grade. So I used that was my handheld device of choice. While everybody else moved on to PSPs and Nintendo DSs and stuff, I stuck with my Game Boy Advance. And I played a lot of Pokemon, played a lot of 2D action side scrollers and stuff. I was a huge fan of those. Played the Backyard Sports series, so backyard hockey, backyard baseball,
backyard baseball was fire. I loved backyard baseball.
I love those games. So that was a whole lot of fun for me. And then I ended up like getting an allowance and doing odd jobs and just saving any dollar I can get my hands on. And me and my younger brother pitched, like, we combined our money and ended up getting a PlayStation 3. We ended yeah, we got the PlayStation 3 because I had already got donated a 360 at the time. So I had a 360, which is where all these games are here. I had a 360, so my brother and I decided to like, why don't we just get a PlayStation 3 so we can have both consoles? Because I was a huge fan of shooting games, and he wasn't so much. He was more of like an RPG. He was more of like Pokemon. He was more of like open world, not open world, but like huge sandbox type games. So like Crackdown, Mercenaries. He was fans of like those kinds of games, like Just Cause, and I was more Halo, Call of Duty, Gears. So yeah, we had like a little bit of a divide in gaming genres, and it was too much for one console. So we ended up pulling our money together and getting a second console so that we were able to have two in the house.
It's smart that you went the route of getting the like the rival console, as many would like to say, or something like that, or whatever. Just because then you have like a little bit more broader aspect, and you get to see what that console has to give compared to what the 360 had at that time. You get to mess around with the PlayStation. Did you guys mess around with like HDMI cables back then, or were you still plugging stuff in?
No, we were. This is so embarrassing to admit, but I still had a big CRT television up until I didn't get an HDMI compatible TV until like 2013, until I got my PlayStation 4. So I played on this big Sony CRT, little square thing. It weighed like 800,000 pounds, and I played on that thing from PS1, PS2, and then all the way through my PS3 generation. So yeah, I was happy too. I didn't understand what an HDMI thing was until I got like I think I brought my PlayStation 3 over to my friend's house and plugged it in, and it just felt sluggish. Like it felt there was like input lag. So I was like, when I witnessed that, I was like, I'm gonna stay on my CRT until the day I die. I actually still have the CRT in my house.
Keep it.
So
Keep
yeah,
it.
I'm keeping it. It's wonderful. I love it.
Well, those things are like getting really popular again and coming back up in price because they're like a lot harder to come by and stuff now. I got this little tiny CRT behind me that I use to play my Sega games and old school Nintendo games, and my 3DO I have on there as well. Oh yeah. Oh is right.
Oh.
It's something else. But I mean, it's fantastic to be able to have all that stuff to kind of go back and remember where you really came from in the times of gaming, or like, what you missed out on that was insane for the time. Because the 3DO back in the day was like the most expensive console, and I mean, I feel like that's why a lot of people brushed it off, was because it was just so dang out there in price, and it didn't really do a whole lot more than some of the other cheaper ones did around that same time period. Mm-hmm. But really cool stuff. I ended up purchasing mine for what I would think is too much money. I'm not gonna go over the price with you right
don't say it. It's gonna be embarrassing.
It's too much. But I'm happy that I have it, and it's pretty dope. Because I've always wanted one. Even when I was a little kid, I wanted one of those. But I just never could get my hands on it because they're kind of scarce, for sure. Mm-hmm. But going on down the line, so you got this PS3, you got this 360. My
360 ended up getting Red Ring of Death, and I like towel tricked it, and it like ended up dying permanently. I sent it in, I got it back, and then that's when I got it back, I was like, I'm just gonna stay on the PlayStation 3. I was like, this is too much of a hassle, especially for at the time. I was like, what? It was like 2009, 2010. I was only like 13. Like, what kind of 13-year-old is knowing how to send consoles across the nation? I was like, this is too much, man.
Absolutely. Okay. So you towel tricked it, busted it. All right, and then you got another one, I'm assuming, from the company.
That one chainsawed my Halo Reach. I actually have 2 copies of Halo Reach on my shelf because it, like, I guess somebody tripped over the cable and it fell off like this, like it probably dropped like maybe 2 inches, 3 inches onto the floor, and it just hurt. I just heard and it ate my game. Like it just sawed my game, and I was like, oh my god. So I had to go out and buy another copy of Halo Reach. And at the time, because I'm like 13, so I had to like get somebody, like I had to get one of my friend's parents to go buy Halo Reach, and it was just too much. It was too much of a mess. I was like, man, I'm done. I'm done playing Xbox Live games and stuff like that.
Dang, going out the hard way. Anyways, so after that period of having that 360 and the PlayStation 3, did you have like any like did you have any need to like be attached to one platform or another at all as a kid and growing up, or like because usually like I'm gonna be honest, like when I was young, before the Xbox came out, I was PlayStation. Even after the PlayStation came, or I mean, even after the Xbox came out, I was still PlayStation until I found some cool things on Xbox, and I was Xbox, and I was pretty much only Xbox until I was like 25. Keep in mind, I'm like about to be 33 next in about a week and a half. So I started to kind of open up my mind as I became more of an adult into thinking, you know what, they both have something dope to offer. I don't really have to bandwagon one so hard. And plus now that I have, you know, my own job, my own place and everything like that, I don't have to rely on mama to go get me a console and then war with that console that I couldn't afford by myself.
I guess I was more partial to PlayStation 3, and this might be the dumbest reason on planet Earth, but I have really small hands. So the 360 controller,
we were talking about that with
the 360 controller makes me sweat. And I only had one wired 360 controller, which I actually still use to this day. This is my original one that I've got with my 360, that I use for game development. And because it didn't have the battery pack on the back, it didn't make my hands sweat. So like if I played my 360, which again, I had a brother. So if somebody was on it and they ended up using this controller. So if I wasn't able to use this controller, I refused to play the game, or I refused to turn the console on. Because it got uncomfortable, and I don't know. I have really clammy hands, and since they're small, like I'm vastly annoyed by that. So I ended up gravitating towards the PlayStation 3 controller because I was able to just cradle it in my hands. But did I have a preference? Not really. I think a lot of my friends were on 360 at the time in school and stuff, so I would hop on Xbox Live and play with them. But I think that as games got more mature, or at least when I started buying more games, or acquiring more games, either borrowing from friends and never giving them back, or trading games, as I was able to get more mature games and more narrative heavy games, I realized that the PlayStation 3 was probably the home for me. So games that like Infamous and Uncharted really sold me, because I was like, wow, this is a video game. Like this is like a movie. This is like a movie I'd watch. You know, growing up, like or just staring at a TV, and movies that would play on like TNT and stuff like that at my friend's house. I'm like, wow, this is a really cool high production mocap. Voice acting is great. These characters are believable. These worlds are great. I love this. And to me, I was more hooked on the idea that video games are going to become a higher medium than just like, you know, because you and I grew up similar around the same time. I think we have about a 7 or 8 year gap between us. I'm 25 now, and you're about to be, yeah. So back when we were playing games, we were bullied for that kind of stuff, right? Like games wasn't cool. Games didn't hit the mainstream until like...
You didn't show up to school wearing a t-shirt and bringing a controller. Like, you just didn't do that kind of stuff. You talked about it with your specific, you know, circle after school, outside of school. You didn't like sit there in lunchtime talking about... I mean,
no, not at all.
I mean, sometimes you did, but like it was usually, you know, just most of us in school and whatnot, we trying to holler at girls and, you know...
Well, yeah,
and do as much crazy stuff we can do before the bell rings and you have to get into the classroom. Video games didn't have any space or time.
They weren't cool. They were. You had this stigma of like sitting in your mom's basement playing games and being a loser, right? So when a girl was like, what do you do on your spare time? I'm like, nothing. Nothing.
Chill.
I just be chilling, man. Like, no, like you said, oh, I played video games. They're like, okay, this guy's a loser. This guy smells terrible. This guy's, eats Cheeto. He's got Cheeto breath. Whatever.
He's
I'm
a
like, come on,
basement
man.
dweller.
Yeah, and now like video games is cool. So I just remember like when Call of Duty came out and everybody was like raving about it. I guess like all the cool kids were like, man, COD's cool, and then like that was it. That's all you ever heard. They were like, yeah, man, the new Call of Duty came out, and then like 2 days later, you never hear anything about it, right? Because games weren't cool. It would just be pushed to the side, right? So yeah, like things like that, I was like, oh man, games are lame, right? And to be frank with you, like Gears of War was awesome. I love Gears of War. I love the spectacle of it. I don't think that like Gears of War I related to. I can't relate. I'm 5'4". Like I'm like I can't do this. So to me, I related to more people like Nathan Drake and stuff. Nathan Hale from Resistance. People who had like things to lose, people who were they felt different, obviously because I was in a different nation. So I resonated with that kind of imagery that like these characters are outsiders or losers or just normal people, which happened to be more on the PlayStation side at the time. Infamous, Resistance, Uncharted, Jack and Daxter. I grew up playing these kinds of games that feature like the outsiders would resonate with me. So yeah, I ended up staying on PlayStation for quite some time, and I guess that would be my preferred platform.
Gotcha. So now we kind of get towards more of, recent times, but not exactly to today's times now. So PlayStation 3, or not PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, where were you at?
I was on a PlayStation 4. I think that everybody was moving to PlayStation 4. No, my bad. My friends ended up getting Xbox One, and I was really, really close to my friends at the time. And it was freshman year of high school. I was a sophomore in 2013, going on to become a junior later that summer. So I was like, oh, I'm about to drive. I'm about to, we're about to be able to hang out regularly. That was the dream. That was the thought. So I ended up getting the opposite console as all of the rest of my friends. Especially since like at the time, like I was thinking that I was just going to end up playing narrative heavy games anyways. And I was kind of getting tired of playing Call of Duty with my friends. Cause I think at the time, like the golden age of Call of Duty, I was up and over the hill, like Modern Warfare 2, that kind of stuff. I was like, those days are gone, guys. So I just decided to stay indoors and play single player heavy games. So that's probably what influenced my choice as well too. And yeah, and I don't regret it at all. And I think that as I've gotten older, I've spent less time playing multiplayer games and less time being more social and more time playing single player games, just because I'm able to play them at my own pace. And yeah, and we don't have those obnoxious parties anymore like we used to.
Oh yes.
Those could be pretty crazy.
Those were fantastic for the time, but I think I could like if I was offered to go back and do that, I don't think I'd go back at this point anymore.
I don't think I would go back either, because I feel like I've outgrown it. I feel like I've also outgrown the kind of the risque, crazy things that we used to say in the party chat.
Oh yes.
So we don't.
Yes.
The
dangerous things.
Those say whatever you can't. Yeah. You never want them leaked out
in public.
Yeah, you never want to leak them out. So
because
it's the spirits are high, we're competition, things are sweaty. People, it was very easy to hurl insults and go to a place where you're not really talking with rationale or logic. So if I ever go to court, please kill me before you guys leak those old Modern Warfare 2 lobbies with my friends, or old 2K lobbies with my friends. We don't.
I still get a little ratchet every once in a while when I play Rocket League. Every time, like Rocket League brings that like frustration and anger out of me, especially when I'm playing with like incompetent teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Oh man, don't allow me to be in the game chat. Put me in a party chat. Take me away from everybody. But anyways, so now we're up to the point that we're at. We got PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Are you messing around on both of them? Do you just mostly play on your PlayStation? What are you playing on right now?
My main system is a oh god, I can't point. My main system is a PlayStation 5,
Mm-hmm.
and I play all my Xbox games on my Xbox account on my computer.
Gotcha.
I was debating. I had a conversation with somebody the other day. I think it was Luca. She had asked to play a game, and it was a console exclusive game. It was Crossfire X, and I was
Oh
like,
Lord.
I'm not spending $300 to play Crossfire X with you for like 25 minutes. Like, it's just not happening.
No, I'm sorry, Luca, but no, not Crossfire X is not the game to get somebody to buy a console. It just isn't. No, not my game. Not something you're gonna catch me playing anymore. I played it twice now, and I was just like, I just can't. And then a little bit later, like I guess they released the story piece for the game.
Yeah.
And I was already out of that game. I couldn't mess with it at all anymore. It was just not good. Like I don't even know how to describe it. It just wasn't good in my eyes, and obviously to a lot of people's, because that had one of the lowest scores I've seen for a shooter game
In a long time.
in a long
In
time.
like in a really long time.
It's embarrassing. But,
yeah, it is embarrassing.
But to move to something a little bit more positive, now I'm going to start asking you, questions more on the development side. And we actually had one question before I hop into my own. Hustle and Motivate asks, what's one type of game Deli has worked on before that he would like to work on? I'm guessing again.
I worked on
or more or less, what type of game have you not worked on that you'd like to work on?
Oh, I'd love to work on BioShock. Hands down. BioShock, Splinter Cell, and Mass Effect. In that order.
I feel ashamed saying this out loud, but BioShock, I'm currently playing through the first one.
It's a little rough.
Never played it before, and I can tell you that game is scaring the daylights out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be because I watched my buddy play like BioShock Infinite, and it wasn't scary. It was more or less like insulting in some ways, to where like I don't know, if it felt like the society was really pompous and kind of like,
oh yeah, of course,
fucked up or whatnot.
Racist.
But, yeah, thank you. I mean, to say the least.
That's the man, I'm not gonna say charm, but that's the world building. That's the world building of the setting of the way it is, because BioShock always revolves around the extremes, right? Andrew Ryan in the original decided to say F the US government, I'm gonna go live underwater and make my own city, and in 2 it revisits kind of the same thing, more of like a prequel thing. And then in 3 it's like the same thing, F the US government, I'm gonna go make my own city and go live up in the sky, where it sucks to say this, but people are free to feel how they feel and say what they say, which happens to be at the time a very popular a sentiment of racism was drawing. So yeah, it always deals in extremes, and I think that is, for lack of better words, part of the charm of the game. And I think that it handles those kinds of topics well, which is why I believe that BioShock is regarded as one of the better series to ever come out, and especially a fantastic trilogy. It's full of nuance and what's it called? It's full of nuance and tasteful. It's very tasteful in the way they because blatant things aren't something that would shock somebody if you were playing it, because you and I as minorities have heard worse. So it's like, it's nice to see that it's just like that insidious racism and not so much like the racial slur when you're walking across the street kind of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a
So
subtle smack to the face.
yeah. But it's blatant enough. It's blatant enough to be like, okay, there's something wrong here.
Yep, it's still a smack to the face. It's subtle, but still a smack to the face. All right, so yeah, so as I was saying, like I've been playing the very first Bioshock, and to me, that game is just creepy and scary. And I've been playing it like with my headphones on, and man, just the kind of screams and stuff that you hear when you're walking from room to room, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying for me.
Something that I admire by Bioshock is the audio design, especially since it's one of the first games. It's in 2007. It's one of the first games that pioneered that the audio drop, like the pickup where you pick up and it's like the audio tape and it plays back and it gives you that kind of story. Until then, like we had not seen anything like it before. So it's like again, Bioshock's world building, the audio design, everything about it is just immaculate. It's one of the best to ever be made.
I'll come back to a couple more questions from the chat here in just a moment, but I just want to know, like, if you were to sum up a few things, why would you say gaming is important to you? Because, like, I mean, as you said, you came in late with the NES, and you hopped into the PlayStation, then hopped over to the PlayStation 3, 360, and then, you know, the PS4, and now where you're at with the PS5 and playing on PC, and now you're developing and stuff like that. At what point during all of that stuff happening were you like, man, like this is the ticket for me?
Well, for me, gaming is important because I always felt like I had a place to belong. It didn't matter what kind of game I was, or what kind of how big of a loser I was, or if I even spoke the language at all. I had a place, right? So if you want to do racing games, you know, I play racing games. If you want to play fighting games, you play fighting games. If you want to play a game that simulates, I don't know, mowing the lawn, you can have that as well too. It's just, it was, to me at the time, growing up, getting into gaming was inclusive. It was like everybody wanted others to play games. Everybody wanted to share games. Everybody wanted to talk about it because it was like it was like art. It was like painting. It was like movies. It was like any other hobby in the world. But it was just so much easier to get into games than it was to get into art or movies. You know what I mean? If somebody says, "Oh, you like action movies," start, and somebody gives you a list of like 100 action movies, you're like, "Ah, this is overwhelming," right? But if you ask somebody, "Hey, I like racing games, where should I start?" They said, "Oh, this is the best." Boom. And it covers everything that you need to. Go play Forza Horizon. It's got group activities. It's got online racing. It's got all the cars that you know and recognize. It's got enough sim, but enough arcade activities. It's very beautiful. It's very cool. It's very easy to get into. And it's like, that's what to me is most important about games. It's like, it's always anybody, no matter what, has had a place. And I've always felt like it was like my best friend, especially growing up and not being able to make as many friends or not being able to converse with people until I learned the language aptly enough. I've always turned to games as my best friend. So,
Okay.
but
Fantastic answer.
for your
Continue.
second question, when did I know it was like I was a gamer and wanted to go into game development? I knew I was a gamer pretty early on. I think probably around the PlayStation 2 era. I was playing Mortal Kombat. I was playing Twisted Metal. I was playing all these games that I should not have been playing. But I loved it. I would go to friends' house. I'd compete. I'd do whatever I can to get my hands on the next game, on the newest release. I was I was addicted. I was like, I'm excited to play the newest game. I remember showing up to a friend's house and was like, yo, take 3 of my games and I'll get the newest PlayStation game. Or, you know what I mean? I was doing anything I possibly can to get my hands on it. So I was like, man, gaming is just it really has transcended just the controller and the TV for me. It like seeped into my lifestyle. It influenced the way I talked, the way I walked. It influenced the way how I looked at myself, how confident I am in myself. It was like games were just so cool. Like anybody that I wanted to be and anything that I wanted to visit, I could in a video game. and it was cool. Like I loved these characters. They're all amazing. So yeah, I knew I was a gamer around the PlayStation 2 era. Like, so to me, like 2005, 2007, around, well, 2000, more 2007 than anything else. And as for my ticket to games, Infamous 2 was the one that I remember really sparking my interest. There was like this level or mission editor thing, and I was playing around with that, and I just thought it was so cool to see all the bits and pieces working, and I was trying to solve this, like I was trying to make like this rink where like it was like a 3-on-3 AIs were fighting, but there was a lot of issues with the way AI pathing was, AI interacting was, and I just, all I wanted to do was like spend time making this level to make it work, and I wanted to understand why it didn't work. And so to me, Infamous 2 really set it off. And at that time, it was like 2011, I think, Infamous 2 came out. So I was like, oh man, like this would be so cool to make games. And of course, I already loved games as a medium, so I was like, it just made sense. But it was kind of one of the, always those like secret ambitions, like that'll never happen. And so when Kojima announced that he was retiring, it's so embarrassing to say, but when he was retiring from Metal Gear Solid 5, I basically had a meltdown. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to play a highly detailed, crazy game ever again from my favorite person. He's my idol. I'd love to meet him, blah, 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 this and that. I was foaming at the mouth if he liked one of my tweets. You know, I made a Twitter so I can talk to him in 2011. It was like I was down horrendous. And so I just thought to myself, why don't I just make games that I wanted to play? So I left my PhD program at school at the time I was at UC Berkeley, which was like in 2015, it was rated like #1 school in the nation. So you can imagine how my mom felt when I rung her up. Hey mom, I'm quitting my PhD program so I can make games. And yeah, that's what really started it. Was Infamous 1 into Metal Gear Solid 5. That whole, and everything, and every game that came in between was like, I was like, oh man, they're all great, but they're just not the same as Metal Gear 4 and Metal Gear 3. And it's like at the time Metal Gear 3 was like getting 10 to 13 years old now. So I felt like I felt like it was real. Like I felt like when if Kojima leaves the industry, like we're never gonna get a good video game ever again. So that really jump started my.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment from a young fella. You know, your favorite creator is gone now, or you think he's gone.
I genuinely felt like he was gone because he was going through the Konami situation at the time. So I was like, yo, he might actually not make it out of this alive. And at the time, like Metal Gear 3 was, and Metal Gear 4 as well too, was so detailed. It was hard. Like I don't know, the stuff that he put in the game was like, it was hard to find anywhere else. It was actually impossible to find anywhere else. Like no survival sim at the time, I had to patch my own wounds, or no games had the main character's eyes adjusted in the dark, or no games had a stress meter if you sat out in the sun too long. Like, what does that even have to do with games? Like, what does that have to do with anything? But to me, it felt like those gameplay mechanics were just really, really tuned in on like how much more of a video, like how much more than a video game that this game just happens to be. So again, the stuff that he put in the games, I foamed at the mouth because I was like, why would somebody think of this? Like, why would someone spend money to do this? So yeah, it really impacted me. Like, I don't even know how to really put it into words. Like, his games had a huge impact on me.
Okay. All right. So that is what kind of drew you in when you were younger, right? Mm-hmm. Into game development. But what was that moment? Because you said you were at, you were at UC Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
And you said, all right, I got to give this up. What was it like switching your entire path of what you're going from, what was the program that you were in for UC Berkeley?
Theoretical physics with a minor in philosophy.
Okay, so you're in theoretical physics, minor in philosophy, and now you have thrown that to the side and said games. What was your first direction to run? Where did you go from there? Did you, start hitting up game companies? Did you start writing emails? Like what was the next move? Because I assume your mom's sitting there like, bruh, like, what are you doing?
My first was to first move was to finish the semester and move back home. So once I moved back home, I took whatever UC Berkeley refunded me that I didn't use for the semester, which was like $1,500 at the time. I spent 800 of that to build a computer. And then I spent months later, I spent like $300 extra to buy a 970. I had actually bought a 750 off of my friend for $5. He was like, I don't want to give this to you for free because I want something for it. And I was like, well, I don't have anything, and I don't have I don't have the money readily available to give you what it's worth on the market. He was like, no, just give me $5. I was like, okay. So I gave him like a bucket of $5, like change in a cup. And he's a man of his word. I love him to death. And so he gave me his 750. And that's what started my game development career. Unreal Engine 4 at the time had just like right ending my semester. Unreal Engine 4 had just came out. So it used to be like $20 subscription. They were like, here's $10 million worth of assets and it's free now. And I took that as a calling. Like that happened in April, and my semester was ending like third week of May. And I was like, it's now or never. Like, I got to do it now. I got to go home. I got to build this computer. I got to make games, or at least I got to learn how to make games. And it lined up properly, and everything felt like the coming to God moment, like it just felt like I was in the right place. I made the right call. All the things were lining up, and I just was like, yes, this is it. That's my sign. So
the first engine that you actually toyed with was Unreal Engine 4.
Unreal Engine 4. That was the massive start. Yeah, I didn't know C++. I didn't know nothing.
So what was like? So since you said that was your first engine that you worked with, what was like the first game that you could say that you that you worked on prior to becoming like what people would call like a big developer?
A AAA developer?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this Kickstarter game that called Aberford, and it was like this 4-player co-op zombie game. And the story was the fact that post World War II, the U.S. government was looking for a super soldier serum, so they wanted to obviously produce this en masse, which ended up having huge issues, huge errors, and that turned the U.S. soldiers into like zombies and cannibals, and that was like the T virus that spread en masse. So who was at home during the time? It was housewives. So they picked up a bunch of weapons and chainsaws and knocked some heads around. It was a Kickstarter project, and unfortunately, it did not meet the requirements, so it was canned. So that was like about a decade ago.
And how long were you working on that before it got canned?
4 months, 5 months maybe. I picked up pretty late in development. I basically shot my shot. I had a portfolio. I was just shooting blind, and somebody on the internet was like, "Hey, dude, do you this is pretty cool. I like this style. I like this kind of what do you know how to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm learning. I won't lie to you. I'm learning Unreal Engine 4." They're like, "Oh, that's the engine we're using." I was like, "Oh, perfect." I'm learning it, but I can do anything. I'm not good at it, but I can animate. I can learn how to code. I program. I can write if you want. I don't know. I'll just take any job. And they were like, "Okay, cool. Why don't you do level design?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, sure. Why not?" And they were like, "All right, cool. We'll set up an interview. We'll be in contact." And then as soon as that interaction ended, I Googled how to level design on the internet, and I soaked up every single YouTube video, every single retrospective, every single game that I can pick up. So after that, I was diving into everything that people thought was nominal. So I played a lot of Dark Souls in that era, Yeah, just anything that I could possibly get my hands on to learn.
So would you say your biggest teacher during that time was YouTube University?
YouTube, yeah, YouTube Academy, baby. Yeah, YouTubers and other game developers that were making YouTube videos at the time. So yeah, it was all strictly YouTube and articles on the internet and other games, of course.
Okay. So if there was anything you could go back and like minorly tweak about your introduction into, being a developer and, working with code and all this stuff within video games and whatnot and level design and whatnot, what would you say you would do that was maybe a misstep for you, as you got bigger and as you got further into your career in gaming?
I would say if I could go back and tell myself one piece of advice, it would be less ambitious, be more practical. Because at the time I was just trying to learn everything. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it all. I mean, I was like, whoa, don't do it all. Just find your specialty, find your niche, find your genre, find your style, find your type, and stick with it. You know? So if I went back in time and could tell myself be a level designer, I would 100,000%, or learn how to be a creative director, because I wanted to. My goals were lofty. I wanted to make my own game. I wanted to direct my own franchise. I wanted to be the next video game auteur like Hideo Kojima
Yeah, so you
himself.
sound like you want to be Kojima.
So
Want to be like
yeah,
Mike.
it was way too ambitious. So I was like, you know what? Let's take a step back. But I think with that ambition and hunger and passion and drive, it really put me where I was. So if I could go back, I would just say, be less ambitious and be more practical. Um, but I'm hesitant on that because I do think that part of the reason why I'm here is because of that drive and ambition.
Okay. Okay. How does somebody like yourself, like when you get into gaming, so whether it be, you yourself or, anybody on the, come up, people that work in QA and stuff like that, like where would you say is like, or how would you say a person should go about, figuring out their direction in gaming? Like how do you sort out your talent and say, this is probably my best route? Because there's so many moving parts within a video game, right? How do you like say, man, like, or like if you were to like preach to kids and say, you want to be a game developer, this is how you should go about, grading what you're good at. How would you do that?
How I did it was that I found the areas of video games that I abhorrently hated. And I hated hallway room. I hated elevators. I hated walking sections. I hated pretty much anything that had to do with like masking loading. I was like, I need to know why they do this, because this sucks. I hate it. So yeah, and that was all like level design and optimizations and stuff. So I basically took a peek between the two, and I was like, level design is where I need to be, because that influences a large portion of the game when it comes to narrative, when it comes to enemy placement, player enjoyment, replayability, things like that. Yeah, plus I got to work smack dab in the middle with everybody: combat, audio, environmental artists, designers, programmers, systems leads, narrative designers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, level design is cool. Most people think that you have to program or have some kind of math heavy skill set to kind of get in, but a lot of these game developers that we look up to, worked at a McDonald's or a Starbucks or have like a political science degree. So I would say that like find something that you're passionate about, or find something that you're passionate about changing in a video game, and focus on that, learn about it. Because we're in an age where you can learn something in 2 or 3 months and find out whether or not you like it, and then drop it and then go learn something else in 2 or 3 months, right? Like YouTube University, Twitter is a fantastic asset. People, you can reach out to actual real life devs and find out, like, somebody would reach out to me earlier today, actually on Twitter. They were like, "Hey, I'm messing around at Unreal Engine 5, and it's very overwhelming. It's way too much." And I told them the same advice. I was like, "Find something that you like." And he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to make my own video game. I'm trying to do indie stuff." I was like, "Yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is find out what you like. Find out your niche, your little area, your little specification. If you just, for some reason, you really like horror games, and a huge facet of horror games is audio, you may want to work as an audio composer. You may want to work as an audio technician, or audio lead. Or if you really love Marty O'Donnell's stuff from Halo, become a musician, become a composer, and write soundtracks and stuff like that. Or if you just love I don't know, combat shooting games. If you love God of War and the way Kratos controls and stuff, become a combat animator, become a combat designer, become an artist so that you can design these characters and stuff like that. Or you can apply to do QA if you just like playing things. I would say start at QA and work your way up, because it's sometimes, the games industry is a beast, and sometimes finding your niche and your spot is very, very difficult. So yeah, but to me, I always start with where I'm most passionate about changing. And at the time, I hated a lot of levels in video games that came out. So I was like, I'm gonna just become a level designer so I can change that.
All right. So yeah, you guys keep asking questions throughout the chat. That's fantastic. I got a couple more, two from Mr. Inferno that I'm gonna throw out before I continue on with my personal questions. But Mr. Inferno asks, first of all, favorite console of all time, I'm guessing.
PlayStation 3, 360, PlayStation 3. I have the reasons why are I have the most games. I literally I have like 90 of them right here, and then I have like another 80 or 90 over there on the PlayStation 3. But it's like I have the most games. They have the most variety. Game development at the time was like 18-month development cycle, so we basically got like 10 AAA games a year. It was like anything that you can possibly build or find out in the template nowadays is on the 360 PS3 era. So majority of the franchises that people love started on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. So yeah, and that's around the same era where gaming templates started to be. So Call of Duty basically created the template that shooting and aiming should be on left trigger and right trigger, L2 R2. And so yeah, I think the 360 PS3 era is the most impactful era that we've ever had, and I love it. I just can't get enough of it. There's literally so many games from small indie titles to single A, double A, triple A games that are all absolutely amazing. They're also, because of the short development cycles, they are also the most bold. So we've got a lot of cool co-op games. We got a lot of games like Soldier of Fortune. We got a lot of narrative heavy games. We got a lot of stealth action games, which happens to be my favorite genre. And we just got a lot of cool, exciting, and bold games because people were excited. People were willing to take risks because it wasn't too expensive to make a video game at the time.
All right, and then he continues to ask, what are your favorite games? So plural.
Top three would be Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, because I played Subsistence first before I played Snake Eater. I went back to play Snake Eater. I think the camera is just way better in Subsistence. So Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, Persona 5, and Legend of Legaia 2.
Ooh, Legend of Legaia. My cousin would love that answer coming from you.
Yeah, Legend of Legaia is fantastic.
Stand for that one, especially on the original PlayStation.
Yeah, Legend of Dragoon is good too, and I think Dragon Quest 5. So that would be my top 5. Shooting games are great. Like I love Halo and stuff like that, but I think when I think of video games, I think of games that reach out and change who I am as a person, and not so much like a give me enjoyment. Which again, don't get me wrong, I love Halo, but Halo hasn't really, like the Master Chief hasn't changed the way I think about games as much as a game like Dragon Quest 5 or Persona 5.
Gotcha. All right, so continuing on with some of the questions that I was kind of curious about, going back to like getting into gaming, I want to know how like accessible you personally think it is, because you just mentioned that, like, before people were working at certain places, some of them came from McDonald's and came from various walks of life when it comes to gaming. I want to know how easy would it be for your, like, your average person that's just playing games on Twitter, has like you know 20 followers. Most of them's like their family and stuff like that. And they're literally starting from nothing. And let's say they got a Series S, and that's their very first console that they've ever touched, ever played. They just beat 3 games, and now they're thinking, I want to be in the work of, video games. What
Mhm.
would be your first thing that you tell them to do, or like the first, I don't know, contact you would say to reach out and see if they're really into it? Um, Go on ahead.
Build a computer, download Unity. That would be it. Or buy a laptop, download Unity.
So you're
That
not saying
would
Unreal. You're saying Unity now.
I think Unity is more approachable to beginners because their marketplace is awesome, their revenue share is good, and it's also not overwhelming. And it's also not as taxing on the system, so you're able to have like a lower quality machine in order to develop on it. Because I currently have a 2950X Threadripper and 64 gigs of RAM and a 3090. And that's Matrix Cityscape demo and UE4 is like, or UE5, like it just eats my computer. It docks all my RAM, it shoots my GPU to 100%. It's way too much. But something like Unity, I can run on my laptop, which is actually what I originally started game development on was a like an old laptop with like M30 uh like mobile GPU. It was like an HP laptop. It was like $900. So
So
for a
you
thousand
went from
dollars,
UE4 to Unity.
no. I'm not saying I went to Unity, but I'm saying that like it's easiest to join Unity. Just because you don't have to spend that much, like you don't have to spend as much money to get into the door. Plus C plus plus is the hierarchy of it is not as easy as something as C sharp. So you also have to take into account like how programming languages and how easy the game engine is to run and stuff like that too. So yeah, I would say Unity, if you want to learn how to make games, start there. It's not where I started because I had a little bit more money and cash to be able to dedicate to a system, and I had the ability to kind of get that up and going in a very fast rate. But if you wanted to, like, if you went from your Xbox Series S today to game development tomorrow, your easiest option would be to go to Best Buy and buy like $1,000 laptop and start up Unity, because you're able to do that now with ease. I mean, you don't have to start with Unity. You can do RPG Maker and Game Maker's Toolkit. You can do a bunch of different things. But yeah, Unity is probably the easiest to get into. And I say that solely because of programming language and ease of access, ease of use, and how demanding it is on the hardware.
All right. Now, as a person that's worked within development like yourself, I'm kind of curious, what are, let's say, your top 3 things that bother you that you hear people complain about that's a lot harder to fix than you think?
It would be, uh, I would say, what's it called? Write a better story, port the engine, and um, just do this. Like pretty much any solution is much more taxing, much more difficult than possible. Because a lot of times I'll see on the internet, they'll be like, Watch Dogs Legion was great, which is a game I worked on. They were like, it was great, but I just wish they had more levels that had this, or I wish they um I wish they had more gadgets. And it's like, I hate that. Like, it's not as simple as just adding more things, adding more fluff to the game. There's a lot of checks and balances that you have to go through in order to do that. As for just write a better story, Like you don't just write the story and then we follow it note by note. We have narrative designers, we have level designers, we have combat animators and combat designers that kind of flush out and fluff, and environmental artists that basically give draw to how the world is. So when somebody's like, just write a better story, well, the story influences the art direction, it influences the music, it influences the NPCs, it influences the way, you know, combat works, it influences us, it influences the way we place enemies, even it influences what kind of characters and archetypes and tropes there are, it influences what kind of culture that we have inside the game, it influences and permeates through from top to bottom. So you can't just write a better story, that's not how that works. When you write a better story, it changes pretty much everything or multiple things inside a video game. Even as something as changing the placement of a hallway could change out whether or not this level is in the proper place in the story, or adding more enemies to an area, or adding a new enemy encounter here during some downtime could change the way the game feels and plays. It could change it completely wipe away all of design intent when it comes to subtlety or nuance in this kind of area, right? If a character's having, like, let's say you, Ham, you're going through a huge major moment and you just basically climb a metaphorical mountain, and then you get down to the bottom of the mountain, and then you have 3 enemy encounters in a row because you just picked up a new gun and it was like super sick and super cool. Well, what that does is that dilutes the experience for the player on the next set piece. We get that Call of Duty effect where everything becomes like a Michael Bay film, and by the end of it, you're like, I don't remember any of this stuff. It's not cool, it's not fun, it's not memorable anymore. And that stuff impacts my job as a level designer, because I'm in charge of some of those narrative beats. I'm in charge of enemy placement. I'm in charge of audio and visual cues to guide the player through. If you want to just drop enemy encounters, we have to fix the whole entire level and change this arena, or we have to mask the way a level loads differently. We have to change a lot, and then we have to go look at the environmental artist and say, well, this is now an arena. Can you change the way the level looks, visually? We have to go talk to a narrative designer and say, like, what was the last narrative beat that this character hit? And it's like, oh, well, the last narrative beat was that he just got a divorce. And it's like, oh, well, now he's fighting 20 dudes in a room. Like, well, how does that make sense? Like, oh, now we got to go back to the story writers and say, like, hey, dude, it's not making sense. We got to change the story. Got to write a better story. And that change permeates again all the way down through the game. And then swapping game engines is not easy. It's not a one-click export button. It takes like 45 days to port a game from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of 8-hour days. Like 40.
That's the same platform too.
Yeah, that's the same platform. That's not even like change it to PC. That's not even changing it elsewhere. Like, that's if you change an engine on that as well too, next thing you know, you're basically working with like a 90 days worth of changes before you even start pre-production, before you even draw the first new character, before you even animate the first thing, before you even get any actors in to voice your characters. You have to do all of that preliminary work for almost like 6 months. Like, come on now. It's not just like this. I wish it was, because if it was, games would be coming out in mass. Like, it would just be like boom, 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 new game every other month. But yeah, all those changes, and because it's such a team-oriented environment, one change could be, a 2-month delay, depending on how large it is.
Man, I was listening to you when you were on Doomsayers podcast, and you were talking about the Beatles being on a poster.
Yeah,
a video
that was. Yep.
Can you give the crowd a little bit of a backstory on that, and why the Beatles being on a poster slowed so much things down?
So we were approaching 3 weeks from E3 at the time on Watch Dogs Legion, and this junior developer decided to just grab something off the internet and throw it as a placeholder item, because you never actually see it. You'd have to be in this kind of thing and be in this certain gadget, and you have to walk in this certain area, and you have to look at this certain wall, and it's kind of behind a dumpster, so you kind of can't see it. And at the time, we hadn't figured out what gameplay segments we were gonna show yet for E3. But we were getting ready to hand things over to the PR team so they can film things and they can shoot the right videos and do the all and then relay what kind of in-engine work that we needed, blah blah blah, cinematics, so that they can shoot it over to us, back over to us, and then we can fulfill those requirements and then get it filmed properly and then send it over to the editing team so that they can set it up, and the marketing team so they can chop it up and then roll it out over the next whatever during E3. So this junior developer was I guess was just being hasty. I just didn't care. I guess he was just way too young. He was like, oh yeah, just grab a screen cap off the internet. Boom, boom, this and that. They looked cool. And which ended up being a photo of the Beatles when they were younger. Like, I don't know. I don't listen to the Beatles. So they were like probably like 1960s, 1970s. They had, I think it was prior to the big Abbey Road photo. So they were like super young. I guess they were on tour or something like that. And what had happened was that legal found out, and legal was like, "You can't do this." And I was like, "What do you mean? I didn't do it." They were like, "No,
How do
go
you
find
suppose
whoever."
legal found out? Just fishing
I
through
guess
the
they were
game and playing?
they
Or?
were playing through the game, and they were like, "What is this?" And or I guess somebody relayed it to them, and we're like, "Hey, that's the Beatles," because somebody, an older senior member on the team, would know what the Beatles freaking look like, So they're like, "Oh, cool, that's the Beatles," and then somebody else overhears that and was like, "Yo, we can't put that in the game. We can't do that." And then it goes up the ladder, and next thing you know, legal's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They were like, "Somebody did that," and I was like, "Go find." I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Go find who did that, change it, because we have like several weeks, like we have to." All the stuff that I told you earlier, we have to cut the gameplay, this and that, go to PR, legal, marketing. There's a lot of emails and there's a lot of things that need to be done in the next 3 weeks, and then people flying out and taking two source builds and making sure that like each one runs so that if one goes down unexpectedly, we can actually run the other one. It's like we have so much that we have to do. And this one picture of the Beatles, if somebody found out, so let's say somebody on the E3 floor was playing, right, and saw this in the build that we were shipping out to E3. If they saw that and they were like, "Oh, this is cool," and took a photo of it and got it on the internet, we're gonna be getting a call from Paul McCartney's attorney, like, "Why are we in this game?" And how much do we got to shut it all down. And that was like that could have been a huge problem. So yeah, that there was a lot of emails. Somebody definitely got chewed out for for that. So that was a hurdle that was like completely unnecessary, completely dumb. The person who did it was like, I didn't know who they were. I was like, well, that makes sense. They were younger. They didn't look the same as they do, you know. But I was like, man, I was stressed. I was nerve wracked over that. I was like, man, there's no way this is humanly possible that things could go downhill like this within 3 weeks.
That's an insane thing to have happen, and then I'm guessing that slowed a lot of stuff down from where you guys were. I mean, because you guys probably thought you were ready to go.
Yeah, we ended up getting a 1-year delay shortly afterwards.
Now, it wasn't just because of that, was it?
It wasn't just because of that. It was like next gen consoles and stuff. But like that poster caused like a 4 or 5 day delay, in shipping out the proper builds and stuff like that. So it was
crazy that just one photo can make just one that much stuff just be bogged down and slow down and just screw up the whole process. So yeah, Matt Likes Games says, yeah, that sounds super stressful. yeah, no lie. But on to like what we were talking about with a little bit of, because you had mentioned that being like part of like the ad of the game and whatnot, that you guys were like working towards that. Like that specific thing wasn't part of the ad, but you guys were working towards like getting something where PR could get something shipped out and show everybody what this game is and whatnot. Now we've all heard things about like Square Enix and Guardians of the Galaxy not being showed properly because that game ended up being a lot better than a lot of people had thought. I wanted to see from you, being the person that you are and working in, the working in the industry, I want to hear from you what it's like to have a game that you know is good or could be great and be shown off in a poor way, and how much you guys have in control of what gets shown off for these
We
type of events.
we often have zero control over what gets shown off. It's whatever's working at the time. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like whatever's working, whatever's polished, whatever looks best at the time. And maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, that was the best they had at the time. I'm not entirely sure the launch window when it came to when that footage was shown off. But if it was like a year prior, then yeah, chances are that that's basically what looked the best. And that's what PR had to work with. It's very unfortunate that that's what it sounds like, but I mean, that could potentially be the case. Again, PR does their thing. It's their gig. It's their job to make our game look good. And if if the other side of the coin is that the game's not ready yet, then what is there to show off? But if the coin landed luckily and said that like the game was majority finished, then that's PR's fault. I really genuinely wish I had more control over it because there's a lot of cool things that in Legion that I wanted to show off. Like we had the AR cloak, which was like super sick invisibility stuff, but I think that only got like a 2-second showcase. We worked on that for months and months and months, and we were so excited to show it off. And yeah, like I said, PR took what we gave them and decided that the AR cloak was only best to have like a little 10-second featurette. So
Okay, so going a little bit further down that same question, I want to know like what are your thoughts when you see like a CGI trailer of a game that you're working on or something like that, and you're just like, that's not in the game, or we haven't got that figured out quite yet. Like, how does it feel as a developer to sit back and be like, you see something and you're just like, man, I don't know about this.
it makes me want to put my hands on my face like this. Because I'm gonna go on the internet and I'm gonna see people get so excited, or you're gonna be like, we haven't gotten that far yet. We actually haven't done anything yet. Because a lot of times CG trailers are done like with like ideas still in mind, or prototypes haven't really gone up off the ground yet. So if you're my publisher, right, and I show you, I'm like, hey, we got a sick new game. It's going to be awesome. This is the idea for it. We don't have a prototype to show off yet, but these are going to be the visuals. These are going to be the idea. And then your publisher, you go, okay, cool. Bro, I got a studio that'll do some sick CGI work. We're just going to draw something up. This is exactly what happened to Watch Dogs, the original Watch Dogs. They were like, this is what the game's going to look like. We don't have the finalized specs for the PlayStation 4 yet. So this is all we have to work with. This is what we built from the ground up. And they were overconfident. So PR was like, yeah, the PlayStation is going to be powerful. The Xbox is going to be powerful. So they just decided to crank it to max and say, yeah, this is what the game's going to look like. And then they get the actual specs and they're like, crap. So none of the stuff that you guys wanted to put in the game are actually going to be able to run in the game. And then Ubisoft's are over here like, oh my God, what do we do? And then they basically have to make an entire new game because they made this demo that looked awesome and they were so ready, and they couldn't reuse those assets because those assets were too difficult to run on the original PlayStation 4. So they were like, oh man, we got to scrap all of this and go rebuild it. And things like that happened too. And so yeah, it was partially overconfidence on Ubisoft's fault, and it was partially Sony and Microsoft for delivering something a little too late and underpowered. And it was partially on AMD's fault for promising hardware that'll actually match that of their competitors at a good rate. And then they ended up refreshing old hardware from like several years prior. and then repacking that and selling it to the console manufacturers. And then the console manufacturers were like, well, we're way too far into development now. Like we have to
That sounds like
work
a
with
fucking mess.
it. No, it was a mess from the top down, dude. So it was like, man, we have to work with what we got now. And then finally, when it made its way to Ubisoft, they were like, this is the dev kit? Really? And then, yeah, like I said, it went... Dude, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 era were like, despite how much like we love that, it was when it started, when I heard about the stuff that was going on from my seniors, I was like, no way. How did you? I would have quit the industry, because you had to scrap everything. You had to start from the ground up again, and basically, it's like somebody tells you like, yeah, you have $2,000 to work with, and you build this awesome machine, and then they go, okay, cool, well, here's your laptop you have to build it on. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you promised me an awesome $2,000 machine there, and you gave me a $1,500 laptop. Now you have $500 worth of deficit material, and then now you have a form factor that you weren't originally working with, and now you have a screen that is not as, I don't know, color accurate as a monitor. You're like, man, I have to compensate all over the place for this machine that I just got, that y'all delivered late. And then it's just like the blame game was just left and right. So again, as much as we love that generation, it was a terrible launch. It was rocky, and they should have definitely not sold what they sold to Sony and Microsoft. But I mean, Sony and Microsoft made it work.
Okay. Do you think so are you like inherently biased towards CGI trailers then, since you work behind the scenes?
When I see them, I'm like, nah, no way. That's not. I only want gameplay trailers. And when I mean gameplay trailers, I mean like 6 minutes of raw gameplay. I don't mean like 10 seconds of gameplay and then cut. 10 seconds of gameplay and then cut. No, when I see that, I know something's wrong with the game. That game's not finished. It's undercooked. It's underbaked. There's no way that it's going to launch like this on time. I need raw, uncut footage. I don't care if it looks ugly. I need to see it running. If there's FPS drops, I'm like, cool. That's fine. I can deal with that. But I need to see it physically running for more than 6 minutes.
So when you seen something like just a few months back, like Forspoken was announced, and they showed the gameplay of that, what was the thoughts kind of going in your head while you're sitting there watching, some cool things going on and some, frame issues going on? What is your inherent thought in those situations?
I'm cool with the frame issues because I know that stuff can always be fixed and optimized. I know that they have like 2 or 3 months to do that before launch. So to me, frame issues doesn't bother me. If they came out and said game is 30 FPS, doesn't bother me. Does not hurt me at all. What bothers me is whether or not animations look complete, whether or not combat looks good, whether or not worlds look empty, whether or not character traversals and animations are working properly. Because to me, that cues me in on how far are they actually along in the project. When Forspoken got showed off, I just was like, there's too many particle effects on screen. I can't see things clearly. My eyes hurt. But I never once said like, oh man, this game looks unfinished or blah, 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 or I'm not interested in playing it, which it is a fact. I'm not really interested in playing it. But to me, when it got delayed or when I saw that, I was like, oh, that looks like a really good, that looks really good. Like it's in a fair shape. Like it's in a shape that's like, it's not shippable, but it's playable. And the game development dilemma is that we have to make things shippable and playable at the same exact time. And sometimes things are playable and not shippable, or they're shippable but not playable. And when we go back and forth with our publishers and the big three, they're the ones that kind of help us find that fine balance. So probably what ended up happening was that was playable but not shippable because it was like frame dropping and there was too many particles on effects and things weren't working smoothly and things were kind of choppy. So Sony probably said, hey, can you guys work on that a little bit? And you guys could probably keep the same graphical fidelity or tone the graphical fidelity down or remove this or remove that and make it work a little bit more fluidly, or adjust the level streaming or the data streaming solution. And that's probably what ended up happening. And because the next time they showed it off, it looked way better. Like it ran better. It still looked the same, but it ran way better. So to me, I was like, oh man, I'm very, very impressed with Forspoken and how confident they are showing that off, because when a game developer is not confident, it's very, very clear that something is afoot. So I'm a little bit more receptive to that kind of stuff. Like when the original Halo trailer came out, there was a lot of things that were pieced together. I saw a lot of footage that was like two videos spliced together to make it look like Master Chief's doing one fluid action. And me seeing that, I'm like, man, you guys are lying to us out the door, out the gate. You guys are hiding something. And that's why I prefer raw, uncut, 6 minutes of footage, and just, and the 6 minute mark is when I know that like things are working properly. Because anybody can forge like 2 or 3 minutes of footage. Like, it's physically possible. Everybody's done it. We've done it, you know? So I know that like you can mask 1 to 2 minutes of footage, but 6 minutes of footage is very hard to mask. And anything, and if somebody's showing off 15 minutes of gameplay, it better be uninterrupted gameplay. And that isn't spliced together footage.
So I want to kind of talk about a little bit of an elephant in the room then.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we brought up Forspoken and what you thought about that demo. Now let's talk about something like Starfield. So something that's like massive, big. Like how did you feel from like how did you feel before you seen the demonstration on it, and then after the demonstration? Was there a leap in difference of feeling, or were you happy or frustrated?
No, I was frustrated. I was hurt. I felt like I was lied to. I definitely did not feel happy with the gameplay demonstration. Too much footage was spliced together. No ray tracing. No screen space reflection. Smoke simulations were off. Physics simulation was basically non-existent. There's a lot of choppiness, frame hitching, frame pacing issues. Frame timing was off on weapon reloads. I know that assets were changed and swapped intermittently, so I know that their lighting or something wasn't working properly, because the level of detail on their guns would change drastically when they were just walking through hallways or walking from inside to outside. If your lighting solution works properly, you shouldn't have to swap those assets on the fly like that. They were definitely trying to hide or mask something. And like I said, it wasn't raw. Like, it wasn't just raw gameplay. Like, it was 10 seconds of gameplay here, and then cut, and then 10 seconds of gameplay here, and then cut, and then 10 seconds of gameplay here, and then some cinematics, and then cut, and then we go back into that. And so yeah, when I first saw the original Starfield gameplay, I was hurt, I was upset, and I just was scratching my head like, there's no way this game is going to make its date. And I'm glad that they delayed it. But I still felt like they had like 8 to 9 months worth of work left to do.
So you feel like it should be like almost like a full year delay?
Yeah, close to that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how did you feel when you seen like Redfall? Because they showed a lot longer gameplay
uncut,
of
too.
that. Yes.
Yeah, they showed like 12 minutes of uncut gameplay. I was very happy with it. Again, it didn't really grab my interest because I felt like it was very Borderlandsy, but I was very happy with it regardless, because it showed off gameplay that was functional, that worked. I felt like that's something that they would definitely show on an E3 floor that would be playable. So yeah, I was super happy with it, and I was actually more impressed with Redfall. And I got more interest from Redfall after seeing that gameplay, because I saw that it was probably the game that's in the most shippable form. So yeah, I expect that game to come out in February of next year.
Okay, so early in the year. Where do you think Starfield is going to land? Or
Probably
where
May.
do you think they should land?
May, late May.
Okay.
Late May,
So not
yeah,
crazy.
right,
Not crazy too far away.
right at the end of Microsoft's fiscal year.
Gotcha.
So their launch window and sales extend into July. So yeah, because it'll be like 3 months. That's usually a game's launch window.
All right. Now you see between the industries now, especially with Microsoft, but PlayStation has seemed to kind of be grasping for, straws at this idea, and it is it is being able to have game services. Now PlayStation isn't new to services whatsoever, But when it comes to, possible day and day or just, a large service of games that you have at your disposal to download and play whenever you want, how do you feel as a developer and, seeing these services come out? Does it make you nervous at all for your paycheck? Do you feel like, tweeting out, we need more support as the devs, pay for the games, don't pay for the service? Like, where do you kind of
Um,
lie on this issue?
well, I mean, I get a salary, so it doesn't really matter to me. I get paid regardless.
Is that
Um,
most people?
yeah, that's most game developers, unless you're on hourly. But you still get paid. So, since I'm on salary, it doesn't really affect my paycheck. Um, Ultimately, at the end of the day, what it does affect is the publisher's vision for games. So different publishers and different houses will change the way things work to kind of optimize the breadwinning situation in a subscription service. Again, this is case by case, but I mean, when subscription services launched for video games, we did see a lot of the same trope, because these games are probably the most appealing, and then they're the easiest to make and get into and have the highest profit margin, and that would be a 3D isometric platformer, or an action adventure game. So we'll see games like Tunic and pretty much come out in droves. So yeah, that's am I scared for it? Not really. I think that the impact of subscription services are gonna we're gonna have to wait a couple more years before we really see the impact of it. But I don't think they're bad. I think they're just another way to monetize the industry. But as a consumer, I'm a little biased too, because as a consumer, like, subscription services are great, right? Consumers only really care about how they get the products. They don't really care about anything else. So if I was like, I don't know, if I was 10 years old, a subscription service would be a whole hell of a lot better than and buying one or two AAA games a year, right?
Right.
And so yeah, but as for an effect on the industry, I don't think there will be a knock-on effect. I think that it is a little dangerous if people really lean into it, because we have situations and we have heard stories, horror stories, in fact, of publishers pocketing the money and not giving devs room to breathe, and time and energy, and even bonuses or money to basically incentivize work that is tried and true to their vision.
So do you
A lot
think
of
it's more liable for for the the publishers than it would be for the service itself?
I think when a subscription service launches, I think that it puts the ball in the court of the publisher, and the publisher ultimately, at the end of the day, through a wide range of publishers that we have out on the market right now, may or may not incentivize making more money than making a quality product. Um, and we could ideally point our finger to several publishers that spend more time finding ways to make money than to make quality products, and thus putting them in an era that is much far away from their Renaissance era. So yeah, I think it is a little dangerous, because we have to see how the publishers play the field. Because at the end of the day, like, if a subscription service gives you $20 million, that's not money to slouch at. That's definitely a lot of money, right? But how you do what publishers do with that money is it may never reach my hands, and it may never reach the hands of somebody that could potentially be working next to me. So if you're my publisher, and I tell you, hey, this game needs, this game needs $6 million more, and we need like at least 40 more people, and then you just go, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't need to necessarily be paid more as a developer, but like, we need more resources. And if a publisher denies that resource, it definitely puts us in a situation where we are ended up having to compromise and or make bad games, or unfinished games, and that's a dangerous position to put ourselves in, as an industry to put ourselves in. So yeah, like I said, when these subscription services are offering this kind of bonus and this bucket of money, it's up in the hands of the publisher to figure out how to utilize that money best. If a publisher wants to pocket that money and then make us work overtime, that's their decision. So yeah, you just have to be wary of the publisher and wary of the kind of products that are coming out on down the line because of that. So yeah.
Okay, would you say that and these things may not correlate, but I'm just kind of curious, so I'm going to go on ahead and ask it. Do you think which one are you more worried about? Game services like, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, yada yada yada, or live service games, or do they not correlate whatsoever to you at all?
I don't think there's a correlation or causation between those two. I
Okay.
think live services is just the trend that's going on right now, and subscription services is just the way the industry is moving. I think that as the industry is growing and it's getting more market appeal for the global audience, I think that companies have to reevaluate especially now that we're going to more like a 54 to 46% digital future. I think that the majority digital future that we're going to is they have to reinvigorate the markets, especially in areas that have not been touched in the last decade. So now we're looking at areas like the Middle East, Vietnam. We're looking at Africa and other places, Russia as well, are huge marketplaces. We've seen a lot of game developers crop up in Russia in the last decade that have flourished and made a bunch of great video games. Tapping into those markets is very, very important because that's a market segment that's unheard of in the last decade, which definitely can contribute to the money. So I think that's the reason why gaming subscription services are coming en masse, and I think it's smart and it's a reliable way to get that kind of situation and market tapped into. Live services, again, it's just like battle royale. It's just a trend. Just because live service is something that's because ideally you want to create a product for an extended period of time because it's less money than would be to start and create a new IP every time. So yeah, it's just again, it's just the value proposition when it comes to live services, and the trend is that there is an upward trend in live service esque games when it comes to the consoles, and the engagement is there to prove so, the money is there to prove so, and then the product is there profit wise and profit margin wise to show. And then again, subscription services is just to get games into the hands of more people, because the chances that games are in the hands of more people is that the chances will be that those people become gamers for life, which could feed into live service games, could feed into other IPs, could feed into more subscription services. It could feed into movies and other things. And mass global appeal is something that should not be downplayed. And yeah, as the gaming industry gets bigger and bigger, it's currently dwarfing both the music, movie, and sports industry in revenue combined. That's unheard of in our time, and I think that that's something that we definitely need to be aware of, and that's probably where these publishers are heading.
All right.
Is tapping into that.
The reason I ask you those two kind of mushed together as a question is, and I only have a couple more questions left. And like I said, you guys in the chat and whatnot, make sure you go on ahead and ask your questions before I move on to the next topic, which I'll be pretty much done asking him questions about his history and stuff like that within it. And we'll be pushing towards some different things. But the reason I kind of put those two things together is because because you've heard Sony say we can't put our games day and date into a subscription service because that would, eat at the integrity of the game, or like you couldn't make you couldn't really nurture a game as well, or something like that. I don't remember the word for word thing, but it was something that I was just kind of like a little shocked and uncertain about. And then you have live service games like, Skate's about to come out and be a live service game within, the next year or so or whatnot. You have plenty other live service games like Fortnite, Apex, and all these other things. Do you think with it being a gaming service or a service game, do you think that those are automatically hit by quality because of the type of service they are?
I think there definitely is a compromise when it comes to monetary budgets and constraints and stuff. Also having to filter out content and string it out through a course of months instead of just dropping it all in one time. There are different constraints and hurdles. So yeah, I do believe that.
So you think like a Game Pass is going to hinder a Starfield or just any of those kind of like first party games?
I don't necessarily think so. I think that's again at the end of the day the publisher's deal. Of course, Game Pass is Microsoft's leading rifle round, so I wouldn't necessarily say that their first party is hindered by that at all. Um,
You think maybe Sony was just saying for their sake?
well, you also have to understand that Microsoft is also operates as a different business and a different business model than Sony. Microsoft's not in the
There.
business of making video games; they're in the business of making money. And they've transitioned a lot of their businesses in the last decade to subscription services. I mean, look at Office, look at look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn has got a subscription service now and a payment plan and stuff like that. There's a bunch of stuff that they've bought over the last decade that they've transitioned to that kind of stuff because they see the monetary value and gain of that. I don't think their gaming division is any different. They operate as a tech company, and as tech companies do, they have to push the boundaries, make people uncomfortable, and do different things to kind of grow and establish what works and what doesn't work. And Microsoft is the leading industry is the industry leader in that kind of effort. So they're going to continue to do that. Sony's main revenue and a large portion of their revenue is that of a gaming company. And so therefore their products have to be curated a little bit more heavily because they don't have that money readily available to kind of spend. They don't have that cushion or to offset that kind of spending. So to them, $100 million is not something to slouch at. Whereas Microsoft, $100 million is something they could slouch at, and then just laugh at. So yeah, you just think they're just two different businesses, and I don't think Microsoft and Phil Spencer has come out and said this. Microsoft is not competing with Sony. They're not even in the same brackets. They don't see them as a competitor. So yeah, how they do things is completely different from Sony, and that kind of autonomy and that kind of monetary systems that they have in play are reflect that they are vastly different. They're on the other end of the spectrum. So yeah, I don't think they're comparable at all. I think for Sony, their subscription services is, I think for Sony, a large AAA title in their subscription service may be a hit to them, to their pockets, to their monetary gains, to their profit ceiling. So yeah, I definitely don't see that being a problem at all on Microsoft's end, but I definitely could potentially see it being a huge problem on Sony's end.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a fair assessment. I like that. So moving from there, I'm kind of curious as well what it was like, because I haven't even asked you really this at all. What was it like working at Ubisoft? And like, kind of give me the rundown and the story of what it felt like to work there, on a big studio, on some big games, because you've said you worked on Watchdog Legions. You said you've worked on like some stuff with like Assassin's Creed.
I was wanting that was going to be the project that they were going to move me to. I wanted to be on the Splinter Cell project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Watch Dogs Legion. I mean, Ubisoft is fantastic. I love that place just because of the connections that they able to give me. I mean, a lot of people start at Ubisoft just because Ubisoft is one of the largest employers in the industry. They own 20. They don't own lol. They employ 22,000 employees. So chances are that a lot of the people that you meet in the industry are either work at Ubisoft, originate from Ubisoft, or going to Ubisoft in one way or form. And when I looked at my friend circle, I see people all across the industry. I see people, I see like, 5 or 6 people that I know At 343, I know like 13 people that I know from that work at Activision. I know like 8 or 9 people that work at Sony Studios, Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch. It's crazy to see how far the industry, how far just our studio alone has contributed to other studios down the road in the future. So it's definitely, my time at Ubisoft was, I mean, it wasn't perfect like any other company and any job. It wasn't perfect. So I had some, dealt with some harassment, dealt some issues here and there, because you know they're people, and that's how things work. Um, but yeah, I think it was fun working on a big team. Honestly, I think it was really really cool because there were a lot of issues that needed to be solved, and it really gave me the like the true AAA experience that gave me the true vision of how it was to work on a big game, because there were so many moving parts. You wouldn't really necessarily get that kind of scale and structure from an indie studio, which was like something that I worked on prior for a couple months. Was like, oh yeah, if I needed something, I would just walk over there, or I'd go like text that person or email them, and they'd be like, oh, I know how to do that, so I'll just go do it. You know, they wear many hats on an indie studio, whereas in a big studio like this, in the level design, it was like maybe 20 24 people in my little area. So if I needed something to be changed or something needed to be fixed, I need to send out an email. I need to talk to my supervisor, my manager, in order to make sure that they give the word out and make those changes within the next, you know, several weeks. So it wasn't something that, it was difficult in the regard that like we had to wait a lot, and it was nerve wracking because like a lot of decisions need to be passed through many hands, and of course, you know, corporate and higher ups as well too. But it definitely was, it was interesting to see the final product in moving wheels, because I've seen Watch Dogs Legion move from like gray blocks to like animated people running around the city. So, and it's neat because like a lot of the time in AAA, we don't spend a lot of time playing our own game because like we have a department that's dedicated to that kind of stuff. So, you know, the first time I played Watch Dogs Legion, the first time I saw it moving was at E3, actually. So yeah, I was thoroughly surprised and invested in the idea that we're working on something much larger, and everybody who's working on what they're working on is only working on a quarter of the picture at any given moment in time, or even smaller sometimes, a fifth of the picture, a tenth of the picture. And having all of those pieces come together in real time was it's equally fulfilling as it is nerve-wracking. So yeah, Ubisoft was cool. I loved my experience. I don't take it back. I don't regret it. Some of the trials and tribulations that I went through and dealt with as a minority and as a junior man, well, wasn't my favorite, but it was something that well, you know, it's something that I can put up with, I can deal with, because I wanted the experience. I wanted a credit. I wanted the work, you know. I love games, and I didn't let it dishearten me or um rob me of my passion or my love or my ambition or drive. So yeah.
Right. And then just to kind of leave it off, I'm kind of curious as well, like, because you had talked previously about like being a professional like esports player and streamer in the past. So I'm guessing that was before. Was that before
Yeah, that
getting
was before
into?
the big contract. That was
Okay.
before my Ubisoft days. I was playing, I was doing indie dev. I was doing some odd jobs around town, and one of my friends put me on. Was like, "Yo, man, play some Paragon." I was like, "Oh, I got an email from Epic Games like months ago about Paragon. Has it changed?" And they were like, "Yeah, this new update come out. It's gonna be crazy." So ended up playing the new update, and I ended up streaming it because I just was at home doing odd jobs and doing indie stuff and building my portfolio, my experience, my repertoire. And I ended up coming across some people who played it professionally, and then that was something that was a side of the game that I never saw coming. So I ended up watching professional matches from February to April to kind of soak up the kind of environment that it was, and mind you, this was grassroots stuff. Like this was like maybe 30 people were watching. It wasn't anything impressive at all, like CS or Halo or Call of Duty. This was real grassroots, like go to your mom and pop shop kind of levels of viewership. So through that, I met some people on Twitch and the internet, and they were like, "Yeah, why don't you just try it? Why not? I think you could be a decent player." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I took that and just buckled down, did a bunch of studying, and played a bunch of games, and ended up becoming within the top 100 ranked players in Paragon that June. So that kind of led me to where it led me, and then I just ended up playing Paragon professionally for the entire year of 2017 until the game got shut down in 2018, April of 2018. So for about from February 2017 to when the game got shut down in April 2018, I was playing professionally. That means I was sitting at home. I got my Twitch paychecks. It wasn't great, but I mean, like, it was still like enough to pay my bills. So I would consider myself a professional. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I played on tournaments, and I ended up going to Epic Games for their $60,000 tournament, and meeting all of these professionals that they flew in from all over the world, from Kiev, from London, from San Francisco, from a bajillion other places. Because I live in Virginia, so Epic Games is in my backyard. They're in Raleigh, North Carolina, so they're only like a day trip away from me. So to me, like, that was an exciting moment to meet everybody who I've been conversing with and competing with online over the last year. And of course, the prize pool was $30,000 for first place, and it was split up, so it ended up being $60,000 for the 8 teams that were there competing. And that was streamed on the internet live and everything. It was super cool.
That is pretty dope. Would you think that propelled you in any way in the direction of, career that you're trying to do? Or do you think that was just like literally just something on the side?
I think it was just a little gap year to see if I can do it, honestly. And because Paragon like championed the Unreal Engine 4, I think it was a no-brainer for me to play the game and work on the assets, and not work on the assets, but like use the engine that they were using. And I was able to really dig into the knowledge and skill sets that I was able to use analytically and critical thinking wise to be able to assess game design and stuff, because the way Epic Games was updating that game, it was like they were updating it every 3 weeks. So every 3 weeks I was able to sit down and look at their design documents and see the stuff that they implemented. And I also got to see the engine evolve in real time, because Paragon was like their sandbox trial version of like adding features to the engine. So it kind of was not a double-edged sword, but it was a win-win situation for me. There was no catch 22. It just was, I was able to play this game. I was able to see these updates live and in person, and I was able to dive into it, and then of course go into the engine and find out what they did. And they had all the documentation for it, and it was just very impressive, and it was very cool. And I was able to really hone the skills and the experience and the creative thinking, a pathway that I use now.
Okay, well, that kind of drives me into the next question I had for you, which was, what was your most memorable moment throughout gaming, just in general?
I think the one that stuck to me the most was the ladder climb in Metal Gear Solid 3. But other than that, yeah, me moonlighting as a professional esports player. Those two moments, like I put a lot of time into esports, and I loved it, and I just genuinely don't regret it at all. And I love Paragon for everything that it is and everything that it wasn't. And it was just such a stellar experience, and it was so nice to be able to say that like I did something and I did it well, and I was a community member, and people looked up to me and came to me for resources and stuff. And it was kind of one of those things where I was able to do it. I can put it as a notch in my belt and say like, yeah, I did that. That was cool. It's like a fun fact. It's like a party trick about me. It's like, oh yeah, I was a professional esports player, like I played on a team and got paid and everything. And it was cool. Like it was like living the dream. I was able to go from, again, same thing for the developer pipeline, being able to go from watching it to playing it to doing it. I was like, man, this is cool. It's like, why not? Why not do it? What's there to lose? I'm already sitting at home.
Slick. That's pretty slick. I ain't gonna lie, that's pretty slick. A little bit of jealousy in my voice. Just let me go ahead and clear that out.
Don't worry. Hey, the game got shut down, so don't be too jealous. All right.
All right. So fantastic. Is there a specific game throughout your history of all the games that you played and whatnot that you see the level design in it and you're just like, I wish I could go and mess with this?
I would say probably Ratchet and Clank 3, Up Your Arsenal. That game is so good. The way it flows, the characters, everything about it, the enemy placement, everything, and the way that the levels are designed so that it perfectly crescendos each arc. It felt very interactive and fun. There was enough variety in there, so it never felt like it was too boring, and it always kept my interest high. The weapons were great, the vistas were great, and I just really genuinely love how every level played and how fast and or slow you're able to play it. It also never made me feel like I had to backtrack with my newfound gear, because that gatekeeping is a popular mechanic in video games, where it's like, oh, you're not high enough level, come back. And oftentimes when I do that, I never come back. Shout outs to Tomb Raider 2013. I never did any of those early tombs because I was like, oh, I didn't have the combat axe. I was like, screw it, whatever. I'm not coming back to this. But yeah, Ratchet and Clank is awesome for that, because they never, when they gave me the tools, when they gave me that new thing, they were able to give me everything that I needed to use it within almost immediately. And to me, it made me feel engaged, and it made me feel like that was the game was fast and fluid. They do that in Doom as well too. You get a shotgun and you instantly start using it. You don't tuck it away for later. And that kind of game and level design is something that you have to do right, because if you don't do it right, it's going to feel like there are a lot of missing pieces in the game, or you're going to feel like you're rushing the player, or you're going to feel like the player is going to get stumped because they're taking too long to be here, because they're not good at one item or another item. Or it pushes the players away because it takes away their niche item that they like, or their play style or stuff like that. So you have to do it well or don't do it at all. And a lot of the times in the last decade, we have seen games don't do it at all because they're unable to do it right. And I think that Ratchet and Clank 3 did it just immaculately.
Okay, now let's go to the other side of that question. And so, like, the negative, I gotta throw something like that in, gotta throw a wrench in every once in a while. I'm wondering what game that you've played where you're like, either this is feeling overrated and I don't really see what everybody was talking about, or man, like, just the level design here, like, for a game of this stature, it shouldn't be this bad.
I think, I don't know. I'm level design wise, or a game of that stature. I mean, I tried to be overwhelmingly positive about video games in general, because I think it's way too easy to be negative about stuff.
Sure.
But I think a game that like really turned me off was probably Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm a Mass Effect fan, so when I went and bought that game, I was hurt, downtrodden. Like I was mad. I was upset. Everything about it felt clunky. The Mako was the only really good part about it. But you didn't spend too much time in it, so it didn't even make any sense. And there was too many weapons and abilities that were kind of useless, that weren't really used. The levels were confusing. The puzzles weren't really that great, and I ended up having such a terrible experience with Andromeda that I'm hesitant on playing another Mass Effect. So, yeah, just that whole package is terrible. I also do think Tomb Raider. Also, I think that Tomb Raider 2013 I think Tomb Raider 2013 is kind of questionable as well too, narrative wise, level design wise, character wise. There's a lot of disconnect and issues with that game. I don't understand how anybody could be fond of it. I genuinely have a disdain for 2013, for Tomb Raider reboot. So those are my two games in my recent memory that I'm like, I don't ever want. I want to block those out.
Give them a soft block. You never played them, never seen them.
Never want. Yeah, no, I've never met this game before in my life.
Well, Ash and Luca and Blade X, fantastic to see you two in here as well. as you see, with Agent Deli this evening, just talking a little bit about his background. We talked so far, I mean, obviously about his developmental work and thoughts and processes that he goes with, and then also he talked a little bit about his esports stint, and then also how he stumbled across the NES and a bucket of games. So we've been talking about all different types of stuff, but moving on, I'm kind of curious as well with you, brother. What's a game that you just refuse or just don't really enjoy playing that much? And I'm more or less speaking in genres here.
Oh, genres. I'll tell you.
So
I'll
much
tell
a
you.
specific game.
I'll answer that specific game. That's a Need for
Okay.
Speed Pro Street.
Oh,
I
damn.
refuse to play that game, man. That game sucks. Sorry, I'm kidding. That game is very difficult for no reason, and I was not a fan of that game. A genre? I don't know, sports games. I don't really play sports games. I think they're my least favorite genre. And Western RPGs. Western RPGs are not really up my alley. I think Witcher 3 is boring. And I think Skyrim is overrated. Yeah.
Deep cuts.
Sorry. No, it's if anything, I think Dragon Age is good. I was able to crack open a few and dive into the lore a little bit. I played Inquisition not too long ago because Luca was the one that recommended me to play some Dragon Age. I can't remember. I think she told me to play Origins first, and I did not. So I played a little bit of Inquisition. I think about like 2 hours or 3 hours, and I'm like, wow, this is a good game. I like this game. It's good. I understand that. Like, I understand why she likes that game a whole lot too. Um, I'm still surface level in that game, so that's really really cool. But yeah, Western RPGs is not my forte, which is really odd because I really like Mass Effect. Um, so yeah, I would that would probably be my least, if I were to go statistically, that would be my least played genre, other than sports games. But if you consider,
man, you're making enemies, bro.
I know. If you consider UFC and Madden and FIFA sports games, which I do own quite a bit, and they are sports games, yeah, statistically, hour wise, I have the least time in games like Oblivion, Skyrim, Witcher 3, and other things. And mind you, I still have like hundreds of hours in those games. I just don't like, they're not, I don't go out of my way to buy Western RPG games.
So you didn't like anything about Skyrim at all?
No, I don't. I'm not
I
gonna
don't
say
care.
I dislike.
I don't
No,
care
I'm not gonna say
personally.
I hate Skyrim. Like, oh, bleh. Like I own 3 copies of that stupid game. But I think Skyrim is not the perfect indication. I think Oblivion is way better. And I actually, where is it? I have Oblivion right there. I think Oblivion's way better. Personal opinion.
Fair. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's up to it's up to the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah, I just think
Not
Skyrim
everybody's.
was. I think maybe Skyrim was too much, and not enough handholding in the idea that like they gave the player too much freedom and too much control, and with that kind of overwhelming nature of a game of a Western RPG like that, and giving so much control to the player, unlike a game like Fallout where there's still confines, like there's still constraints that you have to follow, and it kind of is able to guide the player properly. I think that the Skyrim's not narrative, but Skyrim feels disjointed when it comes to the entirety of the game as a whole, presentation wise, especially from the beginning into the middle. You never really feel like you get into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You never really feel like you have a general direction of where you're going. It just feels like you're out and about in the world, and the world feels lived in, which is ironically opposite of what they wanted, like Todd Howard wanted to actually make it feel. So I think that maybe Skyrim's appeal, and I can appreciate that, is that it gives the player a sense of scale and sensibility when it comes to the actual game world. But a lot of the reason why people like Skyrim and love Skyrim is the reason why I dislike it, because I'm unfortunately I'm the player that wants to do every side mission, read every single thing, and when you give me that giant overwhelming, a slate, and don't really give me any direction to go for, any real guidance, even if it's a small little handhold here or handhold there, in terms of like mission structure or anything like that. It makes me it drives me crazy. Almost as crazy as escort missions and QTEs.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, you're making some enemies. You got Luca saying deleting your number as we speak.
Yeah, I know.
And
And then I'm gonna get a phone call from her next week.
and then oh, he's over here flexing.
She's gonna be like, "What the f is wrong with you?" I'm sure she's calling me right now, actually.
Oh Lord.
So
And then my bro Matt Likes Games said, "Good Lord, he's a menace." And
I
and,
mean,
and he's talking about your Skyrim takes. He loves that game.
I mean, my takes are. I don't want to say
he
my
did
takes.
say he likes it for the reasons that you don't. Exactly what you said
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah. And mind you, my takes aren't. I don't just say things to say things. I do have reasonings behind them, and partially because that's why I felt like gaming is so important to me earlier, and that's why I said like gaming is it never is my best friend. It is my favorite hobby because it never really feels judgmental. There always is a place for me. So like Skyrim, like I said, like, oh, I don't like Skyrim. Well, I always can go back to Oblivion, or maybe Starfield will fix everything that I disliked about Skyrim, or enhance things and shrink things that I like about this and Oblivion and Morrowind. And so maybe that's an amalgamation of everything that I love, Starfield wise. And maybe that's a game that'll be awesome. That'll make me feel accepted and have a place there for me is there well as well. So yeah, I mean, as much as I love hot takes, I don't just say hot takes to just like to say them. There's a very finite list of reasons of why I don't like something and why I like something.
Yeah,
And
you're
that
not just
is,
being an asshole. You have a
yeah,
reason
yeah.
behind what you're saying.
And that kind of contributes to how I am as a player, because everybody is a different player, right? Ham, if I watch you play an RPG game, you might want to turn over every single plate and walk and explore every single house, and that may drive me crazy. I'm like, stop it, cut it out. I don't want to watch that. But if that's how you enjoy playing it, if you enjoy the music and just being in the world, and that's how you enjoy an RPG game, specifically a Western RPG game, much like Skyrim, that allows you to do that, doesn't rush you, then you're gonna love it. You're gonna. This is the greatest thing on planet Earth. Which is probably why it's a game that's super highly rated on your list. And I, as a player, may feel different about that. And that's the beauty of video games, is that we're able to have a single product that accommodates two different people in two different aspects, or accommodates you exclusively and then disconnects me exclusively. But that never makes me feel like that product isn't meant for me, or that product is a bad product. The game is fine. The game is great. I don't like it for specific reasons, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't go out of my way to play it, or am super have so much disdain for it.
Yeah, I got you. No need to explain any further, brother. I feel what you're saying. But but moving on down the list of the last few questions that we kind of got is so of this last year, 2022 right here where we stand, to last year 2021 here, what is it, July 19th, what would you say would be like your three most dope games, and then which one would stand out as being like your game of the year from where we stand right now?
Game of the year would be Sable. Came out September 2021. Best game of the year, hands down. I love that game. It's so good. It's so amazing.
Sable, huh? Wow.
Sable. It's so good, which is ironically why I like it, is why I dislike Skyrim, but it doesn't what's it called? Because there's no combat in the game and traversal mechanics. It feels very it's got like early 2000s game design on lock. So when it gives you those missions and it gives you those areas to explore, it points you in the right direction, and then there's a through line, a permeating through line that says like, this is your arc, this is your mission, this is what you have to be doing. And that's something that I love about it. And that's early 2000s game design at its peak, RPG wise. And yeah, that would be my game of the year so far. Second and third would be I had a really good time with Elden Ring. Like I wasn't not anticipating that game at all. It wasn't even on my radar. I was like, it's never gonna come out. I was that player. I was that guy. And then it came out and I was debating about it for weeks. And then I saw Luca having so much fun with it. And I find Luca to be a very reputable person, and I love her opinions and I value her time and energy a whole lot. So when she tells me a game is good for specific reasons, I'm like, okay, I gotta go out and buy it. So I literally went out and buy it on her recommendation alone. And I ended up loving it. And then the third game that I really, really enjoyed this year is Unpacking, actually, surprisingly. Unpacking is awesome. Unpacking is effing sick, yo. It's like it's just serene.
I'm just surprised that
it's serene. It's so good. Like the sound design is amazing. It's very again, it's probably because I've been high strung for the last couple months work wise. So I'm looking for like relaxing experiences, which is why Sable and Unpacking are on those. Elden Ring was oddly enough a relaxing experience because I got to spend so much time like finding lore and stuff like that. Dirt 5 was good as well too, and Deathloop surprised me. Honorable mentions, those two. Deathloop was a game that I was like, this game is effing sick. Like I love this game. It's so good, and yeah, everything about it is perfect. The game design is awesome. It's immaculate. It's a masterclass in game design and narrative design. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Those are a few games I wouldn't have expected to hear. Sable, I mean, I'm not too crazy thrown by you saying Sable because you've been talking about that earlier within the episode.
It's just so...
But Unpacking, I'm surprised to hear that was such a big deal for you.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, man. It just really relaxed me. And you know when something like calms your soul, it's just like it just speaks to you. Unpacking was something that I was like, man, this is awesome. Oh, BRB, I'm going to use the bathroom real quick.
No, you're good to go, bro. Oh man, so yeah, those are some pretty interesting takes from Brother Deli right there. I really like what he had to say about Elden Ring. I'm right there with you, Matt. I bought that game as well based off of strictly FOMO. I had no idea if I'd like it or not. I had played Bloodborne before I got into Elden Ring for a little while, and I was just like, Souls games just isn't for me, even though Bloodborne is, critically acclaimed. Everybody loves that game. I'm just not a Souls player. And then I've seen everybody, hyping up Elden Ring, being so dang excited. I just had to get in there and just give it a try, I mean, even my lady was like, yo, like, I see you talking about this game quite a bit, around the house, not even online, just talking about this game. She is like, you should buy it. She looked at the trailer and thought that she was down to play it. I went on ahead, bought it, loved it, beat the hell out of it, and my lady's still sitting there under, like, I don't even know if she's hit level 10 or whatnot. She's one of those players that hops in every once in a while and she calls herself, ready to get down and dirty on a game, and then she finds out it's a lot harder than she anticipates and puts it down. But yeah, I was just talking a little bit about your take on Elden Ring, on how you kind of FOMO'd your way into liking that game.
FOMO? I don't think it was FOMO. I put a lot of time into that game.
It was FOMO for me, at least 100%. Like I wanted to hate that game. I wanted to hate it, and I was thinking, because I'm not a Souls player at all. I wanted to be like, no, it's not for me. Y'all shut up about y'all's game of the year. It's not that great. Like I wanted to be that guy, but I ended up buying it and ended up loving it, and now I think that God of War has, I mean, a lot of people are already trying to crown that game as being the Elden Ring killer, but I just don't see it.
It probably will be Game of the Year, to be honest with you.
You think God of War is going to be Game of the Year?
You got to understand how much finesse and polish that game has, and it's
Bruh,
just.
I don't.
I'm sorry.
So.
I'm sorry to say so, but like I just believe so. It's just got so much polish, and
you think it's going to outdo a game that changed the way people look at Souls game?
Well, I don't think it changed the way the people looked at Souls game. I think it became more mainstream because it hit those templates that people recognize to be in their alley: open world, And George R.R. Martin. The music is good, and at the time of Elden Ring's release, it already garnered enough praise from Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, because it was hitting that nostalgia area within the 5 to 7 year mark of those games. I think that it was coming to a head when it came to how they presented themselves, Elden Ring wise, presented themselves to the mainstream market. And I think that of course the scores definitely helped as well too. But it's everything that Elden Ring accomplishes, and I'm sure Luca can reaffirm this for me. Everything that Elden Ring accomplishes has already been formatted and foundation wise established in Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 just happens to be much more harder than Elden Ring, so I think it alienated a lot more people. Plus, the franchise IP of Dark Souls has a notorious reputation around it at the time of launch. So Dark Souls 3, mind you, is the most popular Dark Souls sales wise. Is still difficult, but Elden Ring, because it separated itself from that IP, from that franchise, and was able to go in a completely different direction, art style, gameplay template wise. It was able to build upon everything that made Dark Souls 3 wonderful and work and critically acclaimed, and it made it easier for an audience, a new audience. So yeah, I think Elden Ring is amazing, don't get me wrong, but I think there's still enough issues behind it that I don't think presentation wise as a whole, especially as a Dark Souls player, as a fan anyways, I'm not going to say like a mega fan or anything, but as a Dark Souls player and a Dark Souls fan, I would say that Elden Ring is severely lacking in presentation wise from a IP like Dark Souls 3. So yeah, I think that God of War will take the cake in presentation and
I need
and
to
just
hear what
overall
Luca has to say about that. I need to hear if Luca agrees with you with Elden Ring taking back seat to God of War. You think the Reaper is knocking on the door?
I think it'll be close, but I don't think, as much as I love Elden Ring, and Luca has heard me say this a million times, I do love Elden Ring deep in my soul and my heart. I think there are a lot of things missing that could have propelled Elden Ring into the next messiah of gaming. Yeah.
Oh Lord. All right.
And majority of those issues are in the back half. And majority of those issues are in the back half of the game, which is very important for players because that's where the majority of the players end up when it comes to time and investment, is the back half of the game, which is post Radahn. And yeah, it's not the greatest.
Yeah. See, Lucas, like, I agree with Deli saying about the game missing elements, but I don't know about God of War taking Gotti.
We'll see what happens. I mean, that's just my prediction. I mean, I'll be happy. Hey, I'll be happy with either game wins because I'm going to own both games and I love both games. But I think God of War as an overall package may present itself, because the game's not out yet and I haven't played it, but may present itself to be a much more cleaner shape and form than Elden Ring. But we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, Elden Ring is great. I love it.
Do you think God of War is going to do what few games have done and make and have a higher score than its predecessor?
I mean, I don't really necessarily see score as a metric.
No. I'm not asking you what you think about score, because that doesn't matter. I'm asking you specifically, do you think that, because a lot of people would say, Halo 2 is better than 1. But
I disagree.
But the original Halo got a higher score, and then Halo 3, a lot of people thought was better than 2 and 1, but it got but Halo 1 got the higher score. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's because Halo 1 is also the foundation, and also it was new in the market. I think God of War Ragnarok may score the same, if not maybe a couple points under, because there probably will be aspects of the game that are not as shocking or surprising the first time around, because 2018's reboot was definitely something that was a shock to the system when it comes to presentation wise for players and for critics alike. So yeah, I think that when we see God of War Ragnarok, I think that since it'll be our second outing in this format and form and story, I think it may not have as much impact and or weight as to the original when it first came out in 2018. So it may, yeah, I think it may score a little bit less. But if it is true from what I've heard and what I've seen, if the game is longer than the original, then it could possibly be score a little bit higher, like maybe 2 points.
Okay. All right. Good enough to leave that right there. Now I'm kind of curious, what's your favorite studio and what game best represents it? Now I know this might be a little tough for you to, I mean, maybe it's not tough. I'm just going to sit back and let you answer the question.
Uh, my favorite studio, Kojima Productions. Because Metal Gear. But recently, I think Sucker Punch. I loved Infamous. I loved Sly Cooper, and I just really, really, really adore Ghost of Tsushima, very, very, very much. And I think that Ghost of Tsushima really represents everything that they have been able to accumulate over the years in experience and knowledge and um, fidelity and of course execution. I just love Sucker Punch. Also, I'm a huge fan of Insomniac because I love Ted Price a whole lot. He's an absolute a stand-up guy. But yeah, I think Brian Fleming and everybody over at Sucker Punch takes the cake. Just because Sly Cooper is I've played a lot of it, and yeah, so that's currently my favorite studio and and the game that represents them the best.
Okay. And then if you were to take two games from the past and bring them to where we are right now, what two games would you reach back, grab, and give that high, crazy,
Oh,
fidelity, FPS, all that stuff
oh,
to?
that's super easy. Battlefield Bad Company 2 and Singularity.
Oh, wow. That was quick. It just rolled right off
Those
the tongue.
those two games. I love Bad Company, and I think the humor, the gunplay, everything about it is phenomenal. I think it also is in that same era as Modern Warfare 2. So like the online aspects were just right. The core components were just proper. The microtransactions weren't being riddled. The DLC was good. Everything, the map design was great. Guns were audio, and everything about it was fantastic. Narrative is great. Humor is top notch. Singularity is very unique, and I'm a little biased because some of the people that I know that have worked on Singularity have come out and said that there were a lot of issues publisher wise when it came to that game because it was kind of like their last chance to make a game, and they ended up making something, and then their studio ended up getting shut down right afterwards. So there is a little bit of a softness in my heart for that, but I also really do love the game when it comes to how unique it is. I'm also a sucker for like sci-fi time mechanics, so I like time shift as well too. Um, so yeah, Singularity is just something that I haven't really seen in video games, and we see it. It's just like it's just got the right elements of like horror and sci-fi. And I love Dead Space, but Dead Space is getting remaked as well too, so that discounts it. So yeah, I would say Singularity just because it's just so much fun. It's not like narratively it's disjointed. It's not a great game, but it's a really really fun game, and it's very unique and exciting, much like Prey from 2016. And that to me is it takes enough risks and ventures off into the wilderness enough without alienating the player and without being too difficult to play. I think that's what makes Singularity its strong suit. It's just so unique and so fun and so cool. And yeah.
All right. Now, a dangerous question I like to ask every episode, which kind of curious about, is what particularly frustrates you when it comes to gaming as a whole? So it could be
escort missions
anything.
escort missions and when consumers harass me on Twitter.
So give a little bit of context with some escort missions.
An escort mission in video games is like you have to follow somebody. Uh, Witcher 3 does this a lot, and it masks this in the idea of like not an interrogation mission, but like and Ghost of Tsushima does this a lot as well too, which is odd. But Ghost of Tsushima also allows me to be on a horse and run, and the character's locomotion will track with mine, so it kind of mitigates that escortiness. But a lot of escort missions are basically like, hey, follow me and walk and talk, and it'll be an expositional device in the narrative. And I think it's just boring, plain, and as soon as I see that, I tune out. Yeah, I hate it. I can't stand it. But the majority, at least in Ghost of Tsushima, the majority of the escort missions are in the side in the side missions. So that's a little bit. There's a little bit more brevity in that. There's just a lot of it in Witcher 3, and I'm like, come on now. I ended up scratching my head a whole lot. I also dislike QTEs, so I'm terrible at those.
Lucas said Ubisoft? Question mark.
I'm not gonna say it.
All right, and on to the other side of your answer. Now you said getting harassed on social media.
Yeah, like it's just there's this really contentious like developer gamer pipeline relationship, and I don't get it. I mean I understand that it's just rampant on Twitter, but like it's just it both fascinates and dumbfounds me that consumers go to harassment as their tried and true method to talk to developers and get it and get things done. I think if a consumer just really takes 10 minutes out of their, not even 10 minutes, 10 seconds out of their day to read up on how little of an impact we have on the overarching presentation of a video game is, and how decision making in large corporate settings work, I think that they would be a little bit more what's it called, educated in how they speak to us. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I have thick skin, I don't care. But it again, it both fascinates and dumbfounds me, because I'm like, there's no way that there's somebody on the internet that's teaching me about game design when I do it for a living professionally. And also cussing me out and stuff like that, and trying to be and bring negativity when and I'm fairly neutral and fairly just, to myself on the internet. So when it does happen, I think I'm just very confused, very, very confused, because people will try to use like the product that I shipped as like a way to downplay my experience and knowledge and expertise. They'll be like, yeah, your game rated poorly, so you have poor work ethic, and this reflects on you as a person. And I think that's asinine. That's why I say it both dumbfounds me and fascinates me, because I pride myself on being a gamer before a game developer. So I'm like, I would never talk to I would never talk to a game developer like this. Like I would never just come out and harass them and say that, like, this decision is dumb. And I saw it just the other day. Somebody had asked like a community manager to hire me. Like they were like, at this person, can you please hire at Agent Deli at this company, please? He's really awesome. And like if you check the profile, it's like it's just somebody that's completely unrelated to hiring. And it's little things like that again just makes me scratch my head, because I'm like, there's no way consumers freely talk like this at all. If you want to harass me, feel free to, but I mean, I'm probably just gonna end up laughing at it. But sometimes it does get absolutely asinine. Sometimes it will say like, oh, you worked for this company, you work for Ubisoft, so you're a terrible person, you're trash, blah blah blah, I hope you get fired. I've had messages like that as well too in my DMs and targeted towards me in the last couple of years. It's just weird. It's unnecessary. I think it's suspect. I think these people are Muppets. They're unhinged. They're lame losers. Maidenless behavior. Yeah.
All fair takes. I mean, it's weird.
It's sus.
Well, just the amount of what would you want to call
vitriol?
I mean, you could say that. You could definitely say I mean, I almost think it's kind of a like a betrayal kind of move to do. Like you're into this. You're like you're in. You love gaming, but you're going out of your way to mentally, because I mean that's obviously what they're trying to do. They're trying to mentally frustrate you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or try to get some sort of horrible like backlash reaction from you to where you make yourself look dumber than they somehow did. So it's really just weird. It baffles me that people try so hard to like go after what they claim to love. Because you are a game developer. You are developing something for me to enjoy, for me to really like. Whether I do or not is, you know, whatever. Like I can not like the last game that you came out with, but not know that you had 3 or 4 games that I loved that you worked on. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
going out of my way to be like, man, you're stupid. You don't know what you're fucking doing. Look at your last fucking game. I mean, I could be secretly getting under your skin to the point where something that I really enjoyed in, you know, one of the games that you did is no longer there because you're not working on it, or you know, a piece of it or the way that you put it together is no longer available because you're not working on that game. The last thing I want to do is to try to flame somebody that's busting their ass to give me something. I mean, it's like shooting yourself in the foot knowing that you got to walk a mile.
Yeah, like it's to me it's like these people piece together your favorite things on earth, right? Or supposedly your favorite things on earth. Why would you accost somebody that has nothing to do with the overall product? You know, they just work on one slice, one little you know, piece. I can understand like, you know, trying to direct your criticism towards somebody like Neil Druckmann, who is the face of something and blah blah this and that. But like going out of your way to harass developers is like, come on, man, that's real genuine loser behavior. I think it's lame. I mean, you know, it is what it is. I don't understand how people jump to that conclusion or jump straight to that last step. And it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna verbally accost this person who has maybe just worked at the same company that published this game. Like, it doesn't even have to be anything related. You know, people will say that to me all the time. People will say like, oh, you worked at Ubisoft, you're trash, I hope you lose your job, this and that. It's like, bro, I don't even work there anymore. You know what I mean? Like, what does that have to do with me, dude? I worked on one game and moved on. I did a freakishly long product cycle and worked through COVID, and that's it. I don't know what you want me to do.
I have a late question coming in from Mr. Too Opinionated. He asked, what is your favorite part of development? And I'm guessing he like more than just what you currently know, which is like level design. I'm sure you know some other things as well. But like, what is your favorite specific part of the design of a video game?
I mean, I have two pieces of that question. My favorite part is interacting with fans, oddly enough. It's like, you know, it's so fulfilling. It's be able to, like, I'm able to see somebody who likes the game. Yeah, you know, like I interact with a couple people who are like, yo, this game sucks, it's boring. And I was like, oh yeah, I just did the levels, man. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't do the story. And they were like, oh, the levels kept me engaged and I loved them. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm glad that what I did helped out. You know, I'm glad what I did out of the 24 people that were working with me did something that you enjoyed. You know what I mean? I'll take credit for this, you know, little tiny slice.
Because it's weird that you say that right now, because there's been a lot of games that I've played where it's like, man, this game is like the story is just not good, or the sound quality or whatever is just not good, but for some reason I'm still sitting here playing this fucking game. It has to be because of, you know, as you say, like, you know, at least the level design is nice.
Yeah, there are other parts to it.
Or somehow this game is still keeping me engaged. I'm sitting here calling it horrible, but I haven't turned it off yet.
Yeah, like Mafia 3 was like that for me. Like I loved the combat of that game, and the combat and the executions were the only reason I kept with that game, because after about the first hour and a half, narratively and everything else went downhill. And that game is not critically acclaimed, and I don't think it's a good game at all, but I love the combat of that game, and I played through the entire game because of how much I love the combat and the setting and the world and you know the setting and the visuals of it. I don't know. Like I said, it is what it is. But yeah, my actual favorite part of development of the development cycle probably be E3. I just love like seeing it work for the first time, usually for the first time around E3. And because of that, and it also comes with fan reaction, and I basically sit on Twitter and I just read what everybody thinks, because I'm also too playing and seeing it for the first time, um, seeing bits and pieces of things that other people in on the other side of the building are working on, and it's just so fascinating to me to go from gray blocks to, well, this lively London cityscape. I'm like, this is so cool. This is so awesome. Like, it's working, because I only see it in blocks of gray for the majority of the time that I'm there, because I'm not an environmentalist, not an environmental artist. I don't decorate the buildings and stuff like that. So most of the time I'm looking at some pretty ugly shapes. So yeah.
So when you say like level design and stuff like that, I mean, you just mentioned you don't work on like weather or anything like that in the game. So like, how, I don't mean this like in a foul way, but how small is like your piece, or how maybe large is your piece to the level being designed? Like, is it just like entryways and stuff like that, or exits, or
It's
what is the level design if it isn't also including something like weather and particle effects and stuff like that?
Well, level design is specifically just how the level is, how it flows, how it not how it looks, but how it's shaped, how it funnels the player, where the placements of enemies are. That's something that we do. If there's a narrative beat or a cutscene that needs to be activated, we have to place those as well too. We also have to place visual and audio cues, so sign postage, and like we have to put all of those. If we have arrows in the area, if we have graffiti on the walls, like we need to be able to highlight and say like, this needs to be here, there needs to be sign postage here. And then I pass that off to an environmentalist artist, and they're able to put the actual visuals in the game, but the entire template of the level is all me. Is like, if you from the moment you walk into the entryway to the moment you exit that cool section, that's all me. That hallway leading up to it, the the two enemies that you run into here, that the ceiling duct that you're able to climb in through, the ladder that you're able to walk up, all of that is placed by me, all of that is designed by me. All of, again, enemies are placed by me. So like when you run into enemies, they're not just there for no reason. They're there for a very specific reason, design wise. And that's all handcrafted and placed by me.
All right, so then bugs, like, I mean, you deal with bugs while creating, right?
Hmm. Of course.
So how is it that like, and I'm specifically speaking from a customer standpoint, right? How does like a game come out after, going through QA, and you're making the game, you're looking right at it. Like, how does it go from all of that to being into the customer's hand, and then they're like sitting there like, man, this game is riddled full of bugs. How is it not caught by you guys before it gets out to
Oh,
the
it's
to the general public?
you're never gonna have a bugless game. Sometimes there will be bugs that ship on the live version of the game. You could have no bugs, and then you could put it up on the store, and then 500 bugs can show up just like that. Um, I genuinely don't know. I can't explain to you how a bug happens. It literally is just code that is not working properly, or that's interfacing with something that we never expected to. You know what I mean? Like there could be a bug. Like there's a bug in Skyrim, in an older patch in Skyrim, where if you hold an object and then you walk through a wall, what it's gonna do is that the object is you're gonna push up against the wall because you're going to push up against the wall texture. The object is held in your hands and it's not going to move because your hands are stagnant, right? And what it's going to do is going to push the object behind you. And because the object is a permeable object and it's a solid object, it's actually going to push you through the wall.
Huh.
Just because of how collision in physics works. And that's something that like nobody would ever, like whoever thinks that, who like some QA person would have to pick up a dish and walk to a wall and then have to test every single wall in the game to make sure that it works properly. And like that's unfeasible. We can't do that in time. So sometimes when a bug like that happens, we just have to leave it in, because sometimes content has to be cut or things have to change if we want to eliminate this bug here. So like specifically in my job, I had this awesome hallway, this awesome alleyway, and there was like this climbing section that you could do completely optional, right? But it was like if you want to do the stealth and ghost playthrough, you're able to do this and hop up on through here. Well, one of the boxes was causing a collision issue. So like the player would hop up on it and then it would just glitch, and then the player would just re-loop the same mantle animation over and over and over again because there was a collision issue. And it was like the collision was like duplicated. I don't know why. It was like duplicated for this one box over and over and over and over again. So it just would look like you're mantling a wall and then another wall and then another wall and then another wall. And that's just how the collision duplicated itself. I don't know why that bug happened, but we had to leave that in and then fix that at a later date, because if we spent too much time to fix that, we would have to cut the entire hallway in that alleyway. And that alleyway was crucial to the ghost playstyle that we wanted to for that level. And I wasn't going to cut the entire level. Like we weren't going to cut the entire level. So we were like, we'll just leave the bug in and we'll fix it later.
Okay. This might be a complex question. I hope it's not too, I'm sure you could sum it up pretty quick, but like, how do you go and see that there's a bug, like a bug that people are running into quite a bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that, and then you know, go and fix it and then implement it. I know a lot of people probably think it's something as simple as, you know, cut and, you know, re-put in a couple things and it's done in a few minutes, when it's probably a lot longer.
We have to find out what specific line of code is interacting with what and interfacing with what, and then we have to go seek that out. So if we go into this code and say, oh man, it's 10,000 lines of code, somebody has to manually scroll through 10,000 lines of code and then go, oh, I found it. And it could be changing a parentheses to a hashtag, and that could be causing it. Or it could be like, oh, we have to rewrite like 16 lines of code, and then now we have to find, that branches out and it's like, okay, this is interfacing with this one, and this one is interfacing with that one, and this one is causing this one, and then now we have to go out and cherry pick each and every single one of them. So that could take, that could take so much. That could take so much time. And again, when we're developing things and the QA gives us a list of issues and bugs that we have to fix, we have to figure out what is more important, the content, the cut, and how long it's going to take to fix. We have to leverage our constraints and say like, hey, we have to leave this in, or we have to cut the content entirely. I mean, we've had to cut entire levels because it just wasn't working properly, because QA came back and was like, hey, there's like 800 bugs. Shit, like, oops, like we can't, this is not sustainable. You got to cut the entire thing, axe it, start from the ground up again.
Have you ever heard of anybody or like any kind of business saying, you know what, like, although the Series X and PS5 are out, we need to like cut out, or like think about a way to contact Microsoft to cut out the Series S, because it's just not pushing.
Can't do it. Nope. Microsoft won't let us do it.
Would you like to elaborate?
No, they won't let us do it. Like, Series S is crucial to their platform. They won't allow us to cut that content. We exclusively cannot make a Series S game. If it runs on the Series S, it has to run on the Series X, and if it runs on the Series X, it has to run on the Series S. There's no if, and, or buts about it. It has to work. On the PlayStation side, Sony will allow us to choose which one they want us to create. So if we come to them and say, hey, we just want this for PS5, they'll say, okay. And that'll be the end of that conversation.
Do you think there's any discussions on whether a game is multi-platform or not based on something like the Series S?
Of course. There are discussions like that in-house all the time, whether or not it's viable. Because if it's, let's say we're making a last gen, port as well too. Well, why make a last gen port for Xbox One, Xbox One X, Series S, Series X, and then the PC, or whatever, the Series S, the original, the white one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I think that's
you're talking about the 1S.
The 1S.
I know, right? So many S's. So many.
We
X's.
have to make it for 5 SKUs. When on the PlayStation side, we'd have to make it for 3 SKUs. I don't know about you, but I would pick the 3 SKU batch any day of my life. If I had unlimited money or unlimited resources, or if I had market value or market dominance over here. If I knew that this was less work and this was $10 million less work, I would exclusively alienate one platform over the other one. And that's just business. I mean, I really wish it was like personal bias or other things like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you have 5 SKUs and then you have another 3, that's 8 SKUs you got to make a game for. It's nigh impossible on the QA end and on the optimization end to make sure that everything works properly. You're spread way too thin. So until we're able to kind of pick and choose and say exclusively, yes, we're on this gen. Current gen is next gen is current gen. You're gonna see a lot of multi-plat games that games that could be multi-plat exclusively onto one side or the other, just because of budgetary constraints and other things.
How hard is it to work on the Series S in comparison to the Series X?
I don't think it's hard. I mean, if I were to give you actual hard numbers and stuff like that, I would say that anywhere between 32% and 61% cut down from the Series X. So if your overall vision for a video game is 100%, then you're going to have to reduce that by a minimum of 31% or 32%, or in a maximum of 61%, depending on memory constraints, fidelity, quality, GPU constraints, resolution, and a bunch of other things. Because the Series S runs on an 8+2s config. So 8 gigs will run at a generic number like 100 gigabytes a second, and then 2 gigs will run at 60 gigs a second, which is like a huge drop off in data streaming and stuff like that. And when you have data streaming assets like that, assets that are 500 or half a gig each and every single time, a single mailbox, a gun, or other things, it's like now we have to reconfigure how we do data streaming, how we do asset streaming, how we do level streaming, and then we have to readjust the design wise of a level of a game, or just of a cinematic of an elevator. We have to replace that in order somewhere else. Or that means that the Series S version of the game could be larger than the Series X version of the game. I mean, there are countless stories of a Series S version being 13 gigs and the Series X version being 7 gigs, just because that data streaming has to be duplicated over and over and over again for the Series S, just to make sure that it's properly streamed and the assets are there in time. So that mailbox example that I gave you may have to be duplicated down the street or in the next hallway, or this desk has to be duplicated down the hallway, just because like the machine is just not fast enough to dock that from the RAM and display that graphically onto the screen fast enough. So we have to duplicate that asset so it's able to phase out one asset and then duplicate and pull from another asset, instead of just like on the Series X just having one asset, and then just whenever the machine needs it, it just goes to the SSD, grabs it, pulls it, and throws it up on screen, because that's what the computational code says. The level says there's a mailbox here. The level says there's a desk here. The code says this desk is interactable. So we have to go find the interactable version of the desk and not the non-interactive version of the desk, and go grab that real quick and then place it here in this level before you even come out the elevator or before you even enter the room. And that's just how the machine works. But if the machine's not fast enough to dock that from memory, it has to duplicate that asset. And now it's, instead of going 2 lefts and a right, now it just goes down the street over this way and then grabs it, because this way is shorter to grab at this moment in time than it is when the asset's placed all the way out here and on the disk, or on the SSD. So it's like that kind of data management and asset streaming and level streaming and all that stuff is super complicated and lame, and I try to break it down to as simple as possible. But it's like all of that extra stuff is stuff that we have to compensate for, because game development is solving problems that you guys don't know existed, and we have to hide that to put the curtain over your eyes and say, oh yeah, this was never a problem. And the end of the day, like, if you guys don't see that it's perfect. We solved this unsolvable problem that you guys didn't know we had. And that's, and little things like that, it from just the changing of memory speeds can impact that entirely.
Yeah, so do you think if games continue to be as big as like a Starfield and stuff like that, do you think possibly down the line Microsoft can run into an issue with the Series S, where it's like, man, these games are getting too big, too hard to work on for this little console? Or do you think that's not possible?
I don't think
I don't think they'll put themselves in a situation for that.
I don't think Microsoft's going to let that happen, for one. But I mean, I think that we will have a situation where games will have to be cut back just a hair, just to accommodate. For Watch Dogs Legion, I know for a fact that we couldn't put any extra animations in the game because the previous gen consoles just didn't have enough RAM to accommodate it. So we couldn't even put in an extra execution animation if we wanted to. Like if we came in today and Ubisoft called me and say, hey, can you patch in an extra level? It's like, we don't have enough RAM or data for that. Can't do it.
Damn.
So.
Oh my goodness. Mr. Too Optimistic said, do you believe in lazy devs?
No, not at all. I don't think any developer is lazy.
He's like, insult.
I don't think any of us are lazy. We work really, really hard and we're exhausted all the time, and we take a lot of work home, and there's just a lot to deal with, and our brains are working at 100% a lot of the time out of the year. I don't think any singular developer, goes out of their way to make a bad game or make a bad product at all. At the end of the day, when you run into a game that has bad design or this or that, is usually what happens is management or publishing is the one that passes that off. Too many times I've come up with something and somebody from higher up that lives in France that doesn't even know anything about game development, he's an accounting major, it's like, no, we don't want that. It's like, what do you mean you don't want that? Like, you never even see the game. They're like, we don't want that. Let's change that. And sometimes we have to throw our hands up and say, like, okay, well, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Do you guys ever as developers get super like frustrated with the higher ups that don't know exactly how much work it took for you to do this? And does anybody ever fight back and say, you know what, like, bro, like, I understand what you want, but we're trying to keep this good, or we're trying to keep this making sense?
We do, and that's at the end of the day, suits are suits, and they make a lot more money than us, and they have a lot more pull than us. So we can fight back as much as we want, but at the end of the day, it's best to just compromise and move on. A lot of our game, that what we wanted to do was a lot of what we wanted to do for the game is not in the game, solely because they didn't want us to have a female protagonist.
Wow.
It is what it is. It genuinely is what it is, man. Like we tried, we fought tooth and nail for things like that. We had this awesome female protagonist that skateboarded around and had a beanbag gun. It was hella sick. I was a huge fan of it, and they cut it. They were like, nah, we're good.
Now does that come down to like how much it costs that they didn't want to put that in, or they just
don't want, somebody thought it wasn't a good idea, and then that's all that needed to happen.
Damn. So sometimes
Somebody
it has
that
nothing to do with cost. It just has to do with, you know, what they're paying you to do. They just don't like it, and they want to just take it away from you. They don't care how
and
they don't care how much the you know, all the developers in the building could love it, and they could just be like, nah.
Well, there was one comment that I had at my time there was like, can you make it less colorful? And I think you know what that means.
Wow, word.
And I was we were just had to throw our hands up, man.
So the awkwardness runs in all sets, and you know, it doesn't matter how rich or how poor or whatever. You just some people are just something.
Hey, they make more money than me.
That's insane, bro. That's insane. So so to try to end this on a higher note, what would be something that would be a dream come true for you in game?
A dream come true? I would I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. I think my ultimate dream and goal in life is to be inducted in the interactive arts of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame for their Lifetime Achievement Award. I think that's my ultimate end goal. I want to be up there with Phil Spencer. I want to be up there with Kojima. I want to be up there with Todd Howard and Miyamoto and Iwata and all of those guys.
Oh, please do. That sounds fire. I'd love to be like, man, I interviewed that guy when he was a young buck.
Yeah, I would just love to, because I think the DICE Awards are fantastic, and I love everything that they stand for. So yeah, I hope that one day I'm able to do that. But a short-term goal, work on a new Splinter Cell. Just that would be the only reason that I would go back to Ubisoft, is to work on Splinter Cell. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a dream like company that you would like to work for?
Bungie?
Or is it just like whatever?
Bungie.
Bungie?
Oh,
okay, wow, Bungie it is. All right, cool. Well, I like to ask everybody this on the way out. Do you happen to have any questions for me at all? Some similar questions I've been asked before is like, how'd I get into doing podcasts and you know, how'd I get into games and stuff like that? So I always tell people that so they don't end up asking the same question episode after episode.
How long do you see yourself doing this podcast? I think it's fascinating. I think the format is amazing. I think the guests that you have on is awesome. I think the vibe that you give off is great. I mean, is there an ultimate end goal to it? Or are you just happy to meet new people and learn new things? Or are you...
I mean,
how long do you see yourself doing this?
I hope that I do this until I can't talk anymore. I mean, let's be real for a second, because I mean, I absolutely love meeting people. I love seeing where they come from, what makes them, you know, get up in the morning, and what makes them want to go to sleep. You know, I mean, I like to figure out those kind of things, and this is a specific thing that I'm passionate about, which is gaming. I love gaming a whole lot. I always have since I was a little kid, and just knowing that I have that kind of passion out there and there's others that have that same passion, I want to take that passion and put it on for everybody to see, so everybody can see how we feel about it, how much we love it. You know, our great takes, our not so great takes sometimes. You know, I mean, I feel like if you're being a genuine person and you actually do care about this this industry, then you will have something that somebody else needs to hear. So I feel like I'm doing the best that I can to broadcast that for the rest of the world to see. And I don't want to like I'm very open to talking to all sorts of different types of people, but where I cut it off is like, if you're an offensive person, or if you're like a person that is trying to personally attack other people, that's where I can't have you on this show if all you're trying to do is incite people like if you want to incite people to get, you know, a little butthurt or frustrated, I don't care about any of that. I mean, people talk their stuff or whatnot, but as soon as you bring somebody's personal life into it, like, you know, their parents or how they live or talking about doxing them and stuff like, that's when I have to be like, all right, well, you are like not able to be on this show, bud.
I try to stay away from that kind of tomfoolery, that kind of activity, you know. Um, yeah, I love games. Obviously, you can tell from the way I'm talking about games. I just love games, and I love sharing that passion. And again, I'm a gamer before I'm a game developer, so you know, I was happy to come on the show and find out that the list of questions that you asked me are majority gaming related, like games related. So it's not every day I can share my passion and speak freely like that about games that I love, games that I've played, games that you love, games that you like, and yeah. So I love this format. I love this style. This is like my first time being on a one-on-one. So yeah, I love it, and I hope you continue doing this for a long time, actually, because it's so nice to be able to hear from everybody, and it's so cool, you know.
You know, yeah, exactly. And I just want to be able, and it's not just developers or, you know, people with thousands and thousands of subscribers. I also want to showcase those people out there that have a small following and they're just trying to, you know, get in and get things figured out. Or maybe they don't even do content. Maybe they're just a regular gamer. I want to show that people are still out there that are, you know, somewhat, maybe not completely, but somewhat, you know, like smart or, you know, able to, you know, put together a few words without completely bashing on somebody or bashing on a platform. Or if you do bash on a platform, let's take a break from that and just talk. Gamer to gamer. That's where I'm at. I just want to at least bring that.
At the end of the day, that's what we're here for, right? We're here to play games. Games do the talking. Like, you know, that's what our hobby is for. We don't I don't play games to harp on anybody. I buy and play games to play games, to have new experiences, to see what other people want me to experience, to follow through on how somebody sees things in their life and their trials and tribulations, and how they harness that into this wonderful media, this wonderful interactive medium that we have as the game industry. So yeah, like I said, I'm super passionate about games and I love games in general. So thanks for having me on the show. I was thrilled to be on. I'm always thrilled to interact with the community. I'm just very selective about where I am at, and of course how schedules line up. That's always a contentious place to be. Schedule wise is busy as hell.
Well, I can tell you there's been some people that have been watching this show today that is very appreciative. A few of them, Too Big, said by far one of my favorite interviews to this date on my show. He's learned so much information from Deli about the behind the scenes of game development. And then Matt Likes Games says right after that, for real, this is probably one of the best episodes so far. So you definitely you definitely made some people smile today, and you definitely shed some light on, you know, some things that people were kind of curious about or not sure about. So I really appreciate you having brought, you know, that energy, that time, and that knowledge with you to today's episode. And as I ask everybody before I leave every single podcast or every single Behind Them Sticks episode I do, how would you describe gaming in just 3 words?
Microtransactions are scams.
God damn, came in hot. All right. Well, we'll just leave it at that. I think he made his point very clear with his 3 words describe, and that is the future. That is the future, right? Microtransactions. Hey, you're stupid if you don't have them in your game, right?
I'm a freaking idiot if I don't monetize my game before it's even finished.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit subscribe if you want to come back and see different type of people be on the show. Later on this week, I have Spooky is a breathtaking gamer coming on here on Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and yada, yada, yada. Y'all can figure out the rest of the times everywhere else you live or whatnot. Especially y'all in Hawaii. Good Lord, y'all 5 hours behind me or something like that. But anyways, thank you again for being here, Deli. I really appreciate your time and everything like that. I appreciate everybody in the chat. This is Ham Solo 05 Gaming from Behind Them Sticks. See you later. Welcome to the Behind Them Sticks podcast, brought to you by TSWS Gaming.
Come and talk to me, Lennard Ray. Come on. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have a conversation. No, I'm not your type of baby. Listen, I'm just saying we can rule the world, just me and you, if you were playing. Won't you take a chance with me and have that conversation? I just wanna have that conversation with you. Come and talk to me. I just wanna have that conversation with you. Look, see we vibing and you know it's true. Baby, what it do? Do for me and I'ma do for you. No doubt about it, boo. See, I'm a Midwest king, looking for myself a queen. Ready to chase a dream with a dope self-esteem. You find it in all I know, and that's for real. You get to shaking that ass on the floor, and I see what's real. No disrespect, I just tell it like it is. Do you ever want some kids? What your ultimate goals? Maybe I can help with those. The mo was broke when he made you a blessing. You looking like a whole buffet, and I need some seconds.